morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg and it's the 7th day of June 2024. Welcome to our show. We have a packed show today. It should be fun. So Darrell Castle is going to be on first with a Castle report. Then we're going to go back to Off the Grid with Dr. David Kent, Ralph the IT guy, and Karen the Riveter. And after that, Jonathan Cagle again. I love Jonathan. He's the investigator that he gets into government corruption. And I love interviewing Jonathan. He's got a lot of information and he's a lot of fun. So with that said, I'm going to see if I can bring Darrell on. Let's see if we got sound. Hey, Darrell, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, Donna, I hear you fine. We got sound now.
Awesome. Awesome. How are you this fine day?
Oh, I'm just great. Doing just fine. Thank you.
Well, what are we going to talk about today? What's going on in the world?
Well, lots of things. I talked about on my podcast, which I just finished recording, the trial against Donald Trump from last week. Since the verdict came in after I'd already finished the podcast, I had to talk about it this week. So I spent my time on that. There are lots of things going on in this world that are bad from my standpoint. We got bad foreign policy decisions. We got all kinds of stuff that we could talk about. I chose to spend my 12 minutes talking about the verdict against Donald Trump, which needed to be said, but it's a week late, of course, but nevertheless, still important information.
Well, I don't think we can just move on when things are not right. And it's like, that's why I'm still fighting the 2020 and the 2022 election, because they were rigged. So we just keep talking until finally we break through the brick wall there, So what are your thoughts on the conviction of the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump?
Well, it's obviously it's a terrible thing, but for what it portends for America, law as a protection for the people is gone. And the old Stalinist statement, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. As Alan Dershowitz pointed out, that's not even necessary anymore. Now it's just show me the man, because they could never actually find a crime. And the judge, in his 55-page decision, told the jury that you don't have to have a crime. All through my legal career, which is now 45 years, and in law school, we were told repeatedly, you have to prove in a criminal case every element of the crime as described in the law book, in the statute book. Every element of that crime has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Here against Trump, he was convicted and they couldn't even find the crime to tell the jury about. They just said, if you feel like a criminal act has been committed, then you can find him guilty. So that's what they did.
It's all on opinions.
Yeah, what it says is, for Caesar, you must obey. You must obey. That's what the whole thing has been about. So many things. That's an example. Just as certain actions during the COVID time, vaccination punishment for not being vaccinated and so forth, now they admit it really wasn't about stopping the virus. It was about encouraging people to be vaccinated by giving them incentives. And as Dr. Fauci said, by telling people they can't fly, they can't go to a restaurant, they can't go to a movie, they can't go to their gym, when you do that to people, they put, as he put it, quote, put aside their ideological BS and get vaccinated. So this is just a warning, Trump, a warning to us. Don't disobey us. Don't get outside the system. The system is desperately broken, and it's a very sad thing for me, since I've been a lawyer now for 45 years. So I find it terribly sad that we have reached that point where no longer there are certain people, because of their ideological views in opposition to the power that be. There are people who simply can't be tolerated in our society. even though there's no way to reach them, no actual just legal way.
Well, it goes back to the color revolution that we've been involved in here with the the brown shirts being the Antifa, BLM, and all that nonsense that you in the craziness out there without being able to have discussions where we agree or disagree. And one thing I like about you is you're very balanced. Whenever I've talked to you, you are so thoughtful. And this is what I like about the Constitution Party and the people involved in that also is the thoughtfulness in listening to people we disagree with, and having that civil discourse and or discussions to find the right answer. And it's amazing. Have you seen that anything on the fact that Russia is being bombed, or we let loose on Russia? Ukraine did with Western weapons. Is that true?
Yeah. Yes, it's apparently true. Yes, not just the United States, but other NATO countries as well. It's another escalation. The Ukrainian military has essentially been destroyed. So they presume that giving them freedom to use U.S. long-range weapons to attack targets in Russia will carry the day. It has to be a precursor for NATO intervention and direct war with Russia. That's my take on it anyway. So once again, terribly sad. Who are these people who are these people that want to take our children into a war with a nuclear armed country for no reason whatsoever? A country who has not harmed us in any way.
They got to have their boogeyman, don't they? So they do a psychological psyop on the population to fear. It's always fear driven. That really seems to move people, which is really sad. I don't know. I don't blame Putin for going after the bio labs on the Ukraine border there in Ukraine. He should have done it. I wish that he would have done it. I hate to say it, but I wish somebody would have taken out some of that nonsense here in the United States before their little engineered virus they unleashed on the population, and then the engineered vaccine solution that they unleashed on the population. I mean, there's some really, really bad people there, but I have great faith that they're going down. So there's a lot of good people working. I think there's more good people than there are bad people always. So you just got to get people to stand up and not shut up.
Yeah, I don't know, Donna. If we somehow got ourselves into a full-fledged war with Russia, which managed to remain conventional until the election, what result would it have on the election? Who knows? I guess. But this is my point with Russia. I don't understand the reasoning of these people. Do they think Russia can be defeated in a war? It can't. This country has 6,000 nuclear missiles. They're not going to accept defeat with those missiles still in their silos. So it's a terribly frightening thing. And you must think somebody up there must be a raving lunatic.
Homicidal lunatic, just wanting to see people killed because of lack of diplomacy and being able to reach really good solutions that are workable for all sides. I think we get rid of the deep state, and the people that are pushing these inflammatory issues, and we'd all be better off.
Well, I agree with that 100%. I remain optimistic, but sometimes I wonder about my own optimism. I feel a little pessimism creeping in there in the background. Joan's always there to tell me, oh, well, maybe this will happen. And so she tries to keep me straight when I start to go into the things are really terrible mode of thinking.
Yeah, you've got a very precious, wonderful wife. So you truly are a very fortunate man, and that's beautiful. And it's really kind of sad the way things are going. But you know what? I still believe that God's in control, and my faith is in God that He's going to turn it around. I honestly have been praying economically for things to come to a dead full stop for years, because I think that's the only way to end some of this corruption is you got to cut all the money ties. And we don't have anybody in office right now that has the guts to do it. And you got liar in chief Biden there that's at the top. And he has no incentive they have no incentive to do it because they're welcoming the cartels in here, the drug cartels, the gangs, and all the lawlessness. It's kind of all, it's invasion through lawfare, invasion at the borders and everything. It's not immigration, it's invasion. And they're paying for this. So what a way to have a cheap army to invade the United States is just pay bad guys to come in here and disrupt. So, well,
we've got, speaking of invasion, we've got some controversies going on here in my city of Memphis now, my county of Shelby, concerning tax foreclosures and fraudulent tax conveyances, things of that nature. And you wonder, the government is willing to take someone's home because they're $3,000 behind on their property tax. And yet, in many cities, we provide very expensive, relatively speaking, expensive housing for people who are not citizens, who don't live here legally, who haven't entered the country legally, and who don't pay any tax whatsoever.
What's happening with the foreclosures in Memphis, and why specifically Memphis?
Well, it's just where I live. I mean, it's what's been happening here. It's a long story, but essentially, in fact, I was interviewed in the New York Times about the case, but because they were interested in it. But the county had they have a position called county attorney for tax default, or words to that effect, and he was looking through the records and he discovered 5,000 cases of tax default that somehow had slipped through the system. So he started trying to prosecute all these cases. And in doing so, he found 36 cases where these people were on the list, on the foreclosure list, and apparently were not in default. And of those 36 cases, 4 of them had been sold. So the property had been sold illegally.
Well, I'm going to tell you what happened to me is they hit a tax bill on me, and we went down there 3 times to find it, because the developers, of course, are all sitting in the seats here in Byron Township, and Byron Township hit a tax bill. It took us 3 times for them to admit that there was one there, and I found out from an outside source. I never got informed in any way, nothing. And all of a sudden, something from another city came up, and I'm like, this is odd. We don't know taxes on this. And one of our head financial guy went down there and called them 3 times and went down there. Couldn't find it. And I'm like, there's something going on here. They literally hid the tax bill in order to justify foreclosing on me. And it was like, days before, finally somebody fessed up and said, oh my gosh, here it is. Run the clock out, hide a tax bill, run the clock out, because they're trying to seize property. DNR is involved in it, the state of Michigan too. So that's how they grab property from honest people. And it's just a real shame. Well, thank you for coming on today. I know your time is really busy, and I appreciate you coming on this morning and telling us what's going on. I always look forward to that. Next Friday, I'm going to be at Turning Point. So I won't be on next week, but in 2 weeks, we'll be back on again. All
right, Don, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. You're always an inspiration, and we'll be talking to you again in 2 weeks. Thanks, Darrell. Bye.
All right, Don. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, we're going to go right into Off the Grid. And here we go, Off the Grid with Dr. David Kent, Ralph the IT guy, and somehow Karen's playing hooky.
Where's Karen?
I don't know. I think I should text Karen. Karen, where are you? So what's happening, guys?
Oh boy, just sitting watching the show. The show's very real, though.
Yeah, that's it's amazing how many moving parts are going all at the same time. Do you feel like there's an acceleration of events? I do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at the news cycle. It's like When was Trump convicted? A week ago? It's already out of the news and into something else. It's like constant.
Well, and the thing with this too is that we all have a part to play in this, and in that one person can't keep track of all the corruption.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
you have to have a team of people all looking into these different places because they keep trying to find new places to hide it.
It's everywhere. It's, oh my gosh. It's just, it's mind-boggling how many people must be involved in this and are just
Yeah.
doing the wrong thing. And what I don't understand is they don't think there's going to be any consequences. Obviously, these people are just doing the wrong things and they know it, you know, in the local and city government and police, judicial system, everything. And they must think that they're gonna get away with all this stuff. And how did it even start? Like, how can you have so many people involved in destroying the country?
You know what it is? It's greed. People that are not focused on God and being a servant, but are focused on possessions, this physical world. It really shows that they're spiritually they're dead. They really are spiritually dead because all they've got to hang on to is, it's like the dragon's treasure. I was talking about that earlier in the week. There's a book in the Chronicles of Narnia. And there was a greedy guy that turned into a dragon because he sat on the dragon's treasure and turned into a dragon. His name was Eustace Scruggs. Is it Scrugg or Scrubs? Eustace Scruggs, I think. And he turned into a dragon because he fell asleep on the dragon's treasure. And all of a sudden, the treasures of the world became important. And in the allegorical story, he turned into a dragon. And then all of a sudden, he realized what a burden the treasure was. And Aslan, who's Jesus in the story, starts tearing off the scales and gets him back to who he is. But it was a painful process. And the problem that we have is we've been so brainwashed into thinking that success is measured by possessions or what we've accomplished or any of that, and that validates us. The problem with that is that every single one of those things should be laid at the feet of Jesus Christ, because none of us can do this by ourselves, first of all. And second of all, anything we accomplish or have has only, it's all God's anyway. We're just here. We should be here with a focus on service to each other. And, you know, we can be thankful for what he gave us, but anything that we have is only a tool to help others. And if you think that it's something other than that, it will be a bitter poison. You know, because when you lose sight of what's important, which is each other, love, planting flowers, taking care of animals, taking care of God's world, you become part of that problem. You can't escape it any other way. And it's a hard thing for a lot of people to lay down their possessions, to lay down their thoughts of what they need to do to be important and such, and realize that our importance comes from the fact that God loves us. He's the creator of the entire world. And if he thinks we're important, that's more important than anybody's opinion or what we can ever do in our entire life. And so you lay your life down, you lay your possessions down, realizing that he's our treasure.
And I think too, thinking about where did all this start, I think it's always been that way. There have always been desperately evil people. And that's part of the reason why constitutionally we were set up to basically keep all the branches of government fighting with each other. You know, that was the idea behind checks and balances, was basically make it so that they were all fighting against each other for their own self-interests and try and kind of use that greed to keep everything in check. And part of the problem now is that there's too many of those checks and balances which have been sidelined or ignored for so long that people forget they exist and they're not being enforced properly. But that's why our government was designed this way, it was designed to use that tendency toward evil for good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it all to me boils down to, I think the government would work if we had voting, if we really could get rid of the people that are doing the wrong things. The problem is we haven't had it, and probably 50 years or even longer. Who knows?
The great thing about it though is that with everything digital, you go to Facebook or something like that, and you make a profile on Facebook, you post a bunch of pictures, and then you delete your account. You think they're actually going to delete that?
Oh no,
No
nothing
way.
gets deleted.
So that's the great thing about digital is that there's a good and bad side to it. The bad side is nothing ever gets deleted. The good side is nothing ever gets deleted.
That's
And
right.
now there is so much evidence of what's going on being left all over the place, and so many of these trails that can be actually investigated and hunted down now.
Yeah.
That it's really kind of cool to see, because for so long this stuff has been allowed to be hidden, and it can't be anymore.
Well, these people should be
like
worried.
The rightful president of the United States said, we have it all. I think he really meant it. And the bad guys out there should be shaking in their boots right now, because you have some good people on it, and truly led by God. And things are going to get real quick, because God's going to bring justice to this, all of the child trafficking. And you touch one of God's children and you're going to have a problem.
Yeah. Not just the child traffickers either. It's the people that are enabling it.
Exactly.
And everything else they're enabling. So local government, that if you're not for the people, there's a record, and you'll pay a price at some point.
Well, they're all when you look at where the cheating is, I think the nice thing is that we're actually seeing it. I had Bob Terry on this week, and he's done a lot of investigation into the fact that Microsoft in their operating system has basically left themselves the ability to jump on any computer, any device, and he's proven it. So right now, their little ability to frame people is going to come to a quick end here, because I'm sure there's been a lot of people that have been framed for things that they've not done. And they've been able to do it in very subversive ways to destroy people's lives, which is really, really sad. It's really sad. But the ones that have been involved in this, that have planned this subversion and this attacks on honest people, those are the ones that God's going to be like, all right, out of the pool. It's time, and it's going to be an epic end to this. And I don't think it's going to take a lot of people to do it. We just need to have people that can't be coerced, threatened, controlled, bought off. It's truly going to take people that are walking with God to do that. You couldn't do it any other way. People wouldn't have the strength to do it any other way, to be able to, look right down the barrel of a gun if you have to and say, ain't going to change anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the reasons though why I'm so opposed to the zero tolerance possession law kind of stuff that we have on a few categories of things that are considered contraband, is because it is way too easy to plant stuff on people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a lot of times the narrow end of the wedge of blackmailing our politicians into doing what the deep state wants, because, well, they don't want to get convicted for a drug crime just because they had drugs planted on their car in a parking lot someplace or something like that, where they had no idea that it even was there. It may not have even been there. It may have been something that was planted in an evidence room after they were arrested.
Well, I had evidence destroyed within the Attorney General's office, and I'll say that right out. I know somebody else that had the same thing, but there was an investigator working on the signature gatherers that said that they had signed confessions. Well, they changed out the investigators, and all of a sudden I said, well, where's that evidence from the people that collected signatures? He goes, well, we don't have any of this. And I was like, bullshit. You had it, and I know you had it, because I was told. And then the investigator was dismissed from the case. And it's like, keep going, guys, because it's like, it's all out there and we're going to get it. And there's another guy that I know too, that he has evidence of the same thing, that his wife, the evidence within the Attorney General's office, and I'm going to have him on someday, destroyed evidence in his wife's case. And it happened within the Attorney General's office in the state of Michigan.
Wow.
Yeah,
so
but
I think
I've heard too of evidence being planted though too, where they'll arrest somebody, get them away from their car, and then all of a sudden discover stuff that was in the car that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
And
there's no camera, no video, no.
Yep.
Nothing.
Yep.
How
And
do you fight that?
and so you have to be real careful with some of those laws, because I really do think that's a lot of how the blackmail chain on a lot of these people starts. And they don't want to take the time or the effort or risk their
Or the
effectively their
money.
life.
The
to be
money
able-
to fight this is incredible.
Oh,
yeah. To be able to even fight it. So they take a plea deal, or they, get blackmailed into stuff. You look at the number of plea bargains, the proportion of plea bargains that happen in courts nowadays.
Oh,
It's absurd.
Yeah, everything.
Plea
is.
bargains should not even be legal.
Agreed.
You can't fight the government.
Well, yeah, you can.
I mean, it's difficult financially. It's very, very hard for most people. Can't afford to fight a charge like that. Somebody planting something on a computer and drugs in a car or something. I mean, that could cost $100,000-$200,000.
Well, you look at the amount of people. There was a gal that named Ruth that I've talked to in the past, and the amount of human trafficking victims and such. And I remember talking to her personally about, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And she was raped the first time when she was 10, and then gang raped at 14. By the time she was 18, the police in Grand Rapids, Michigan were passing her around for sex. And she was massively addicted to drugs. She just had it expunged off of her record, the prostitution charges. And it's like it wasn't her. It really was. It was a child. She was a child, and people were passing her around and such. But she's got quite a story. But there's many people like that they start grooming and victimizing the children. So I don't know if you guys watched it, but yesterday I'm still going to keep beating up Tennessee, which is human trafficking right now. The whole thing in Tennessee, it just sucks. And they took this child from her mom. Her dad was a J6er in jail, so they weaponized this against them. Took one of their children. And I played the video yesterday where Liliana was talking on the phone from her incarceration illegally. They've broken every rule and every law in the book, and they're just making things up on as they go, and telling her that they took her out of the facility she was in to an undisclosed location, made it look like a doctor thing, took and put a robe on her, but there's no record of any of this. Took pictures of her vagina, suited her up for a pelvic at 13 years old, suited her up, took pictures of her private parts, and then asked her if she wanted to see them.
That's the craziest thing ever.
She's 13 years old. So now at 14, they inserted birth control into her, and she disappeared one night, and there was sex involved in it. So they're clearly they're human trafficking, they're sex trafficking these kids in foster care. And recently I've been you know how God's got a sense of humor. He'll put you in places or give you connections of the people that really this is happening to. And I was on a plane this week coming back, and the gal sitting next to me was telling me she was in foster care because her parents gave her up, and she was forced to give her foster dad blowjobs at 6 years old. And she got double duty if she didn't get the dishes cleaned behind the closet door when she was 6 years old. Well, she's 60 now. And one of her main messages was on forgiveness. And it's like, you don't want to harbor that bitter root within you, because the battle we're in is between good and evil. It's principalities and powers. I get it. But when somebody touches a kid like that, there's no forgiveness. Because once somebody does that, they are going to do it again. But as to your point, Ralph, is that you better make dang sure that this isn't planted evidence on these people, because right now you can create anything online. In fact, I'm going to show you a post I did on. I noticed this on Deborah Burke's. Let's see. Deborah Burke's is a fake right now. All right.
Well, that's why it's important to prove things beyond a shadow of a doubt. If it's absolutely certain that somebody did something, there's one thing to be said about that, of throwing the book at them. But the problem is that so many of these charges end up being kind of really just basically harassment of people.
Yes.
More than anything, because there's not enough evidence to actually convict somebody, or they make up the evidence. There was one case I remember seeing where there was a dispute between two neighbors, and the one neighbor got fed up with it, hopped on the other neighbor's Wi-Fi and downloaded a whole bunch of child porn, and then reported that neighbor for having downloaded child porn. Now, thankfully, it was investigated enough that the original neighbor had logs on his router showing when things were connected to it, and they were able to catch the neighbor that actually did it in the act of effectively planting this on his neighbor. But how many people out there have a router that keeps full logs of everything that happens on it?
Right.
And do they all keep a log? Like, everybody should be worried about that.
Most of them don't by default. And so, that's one real easy scenario that people, it doesn't even involve law enforcement at that point. That's just regular people planting it on each other as a
vindictive.
As a vindictive revenge thing. And he could have absolutely ruined that neighbor's life over a petty dispute.
Well, and I'm gonna go a step further with this, with all these stupid rape charges from that E. Jean Carroll. I would have to say I'm pretty extra sure that President Trump has got better taste than that.
Yeah.
It's like this woman is like perverse and delusional. If you read her texts and such, it's like, right. I mean, is crazy. So I actually really worry more about men at this point in time than women, because there are so many false charges of rape that is actually regret rather than rape to save face for women. And I'm going to be the woman that says it, because I've seen a few of these that have happened, and it's like, if there's a false charge made, I think, and proven, if we had an honest court system, I suppose, that the person alleging it should be in fact charged with the crime that they are alleging somebody else of. It should have a boomerang effect for a false charge, and they should serve the sentence. So, like, if a woman is raped, I mean, the quickest thing that should happen is they should go right to the hospital and have a rape event. And I get it. There's things that are hard to do at the time. I get it. But to come out, 20, 30 years later, just to damage another human being, I'm sorry, guys. I'm not buying this crap. I am not buying this 1 cent. And I'm just going to say it as a woman. The women that do that, like E. Jean Carroll and the rest of them, they're pathetic. They're absolutely pathetic, pathological liars that are out there to destroy, vindictive, and out to destroy somebody else's life. And I'm just going to say it. They can all pound sand and face God someday, because it's not going to be pretty. Well, anyhow, I posted this. I thought this was good. Somebody else made this meme, but I did the rest of the polling on it. And I noticed that picture of the fake Deborah Burks. And so I thought this was interesting, but check this out. How many different Deborah Burkses are there? Because there's at least I hate to tell you this, but the good guys and the bad guys all have body doubles. There's at least 7 of them that I picked up on President Donald J. Trump, the rightful president of the United States. Fauci has some. I don't believe that DeSantis is the same DeSantis that was there years ago, nor was Mike Pompeo. Because in one day, I watched those guys replaced by somebody who lost 60 pounds and was military buff. Not buying it.
160.
Yeah.
Well, Pompeo went from 300 pounds to 190.
Right. I remember it's like all of a sudden DeSantis, the original DeSantis, who looked like a basset hound, actually has a 80% improvement in the visuals. And I'm like, well, DeSantis 2 is a little easier on the eyes than DeSantis 1, but it wasn't convincing enough. So then they had to have a half basset hound come in as DeSantis 3. So thought it was fun. So we've got full basset, no basset, and half basset hound DeSantis, DeSantis. So I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be mean. It's just an actual evaluation here. But because I'm just not buying the bull crap. So anyhow, this is the original Deborah Burks. I don't know what the heck this is, but there's nothing there that even remotely looks like this person here. And so it's a bad fake. But I'm going to say, looking at the eyes, I would evaluate this, just so you guys know, is I believe that there's a high probability because of, like I said, I do a lot of facial comparisons. It's such high probability that there's probably a mask involved in that, like a silicone mask. But here you go. There's the replacement again. But the only thing that throws me off on this being silicone is there's a little jowl there. They wouldn't have done that in a silicone mask likely, unless they were trying to point out that it's fake. Now this one's completely different. I'm like, what the heck is going on with that? So that's a third Deborah Burks. Teeth are different here, but everything about that structure is different. And now we got this. Well, we do have a little bit of a jowl there, so that's odd. But this person doesn't even look the same either, even if she wasn't smiling. There's difference. I don't know what the heck this person is. Yeah. But that's another one. But, people don't think enough about the fact that they're using cues in order to create a character. And so the Deborah Burks that we think of always wear scarves, right? Don't look any further than that. No, not buying it. Here we go again. But we've got the scarf on, so believe the scarf. Scarf tells all. And we're back here again with the person I believe probably is closest to the real Deborah. So will the real Deborah Burks please raise your hand?
Yeah, it's funny. It kind of reminds me of there's a scene there's a show called Angie Tribeca that aired a few years ago that it was basically a parody of cop shows, and it's about the closest I can think of to a modern day Police Squad. And one of the scenes they had in there, they had the regular actors start off the scene, and then midway through the scene, they like swapped them out for other people, and just kind of got like increasingly less convincing with the people that they swapped them out for. And then they swapped them right back in for the regular actors, and they didn't say anything about it in the show. It was absolutely hilarious, but it was the same kind of thing where they tried to keep kind of just some of the cues to clue people in that it was the same character, but a completely different actor playing them.
Well, we're living this right now. Okay. I'm sorry, but we're living this. So like I was at Mar-a-Lago 3 times, and just so everybody knows, President Donald J. Trump, the rightful president of the United States, is about 6'4", right?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, everything I saw down there that appeared to be President Trump was about 5'11". And if you could see it when he appeared with Vivek and Mar-a-Lago, I almost laughed. I laughed right out loud. I was like, come on, Vivek's a little guy. He's about 5'7" or so. And Melania, she's pretty tall. The real Melania. Well, the real Melania, please appear here. But let me see if I can find a picture of it. But I'm like going, yeah, this is crazy. But with that said, I believe that he's let's see if I can find a picture of this in a minute.
Clones, body doubles, masks.
Yeah. I don't know.
In the cases of people being interviewed on TV, very easily CG face swapped.
Yeah, AI. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I really okay. I think that we might be able to see this, but it was kind of like right. If there was a couple of pictures where you could see the dead on height comparison. Might take me a minute here, but it was like, President Trump's tall. He's very tall. So when you see somebody who looks like 4'11" next to Vivek, check this. Okay, so here, this is a great picture. Check this one out. See if we can share it. I think this is funny. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not buying the bullshit. And it's what it is. Okay, so you got President Trump here and Vivek. Now, I don't know if he was standing on a platform or something, but not likely. Okay, just not likely. And I've sat within 5 feet of Vivek, and here you go.
Same height.
Yeah, here's a fake President Trump.
He must be standing on a box.
Nah, that's fake President Trump. He's got his arm around him. So, and then because if he stands at the podium, President Trump's actual height at 5'7", or this guy at 5'7", his actual height is going to be about up here. So it's like, no, not buying it. Let's see what else we got here. Vivek's interesting, but there's like a look at here's does this guy look like, does that guy there look like this guy?
No.
No, which I think it's okay. Okay, look at these two pictures here. Does this guy look like this guy?
No.
Do they even look the same? Is it lighting? I don't think so. But I could show you a real comparison. I've done them. I've got a whole board on different people. I've got different.
He's got the same tie. He has to be the same person.
Yeah, it's like the scarf. I think I'm believing that President Trump is safe. I'm hoping he's tucked away in Cheyenne Mountain somewhere. And salute to all of these people, these good people that are playing.
Yeah.
To keep him safe.
It's a dangerous job.
I used to fly private planes all the time when I was jumping around the United States going to construction sites. And so you get talking to like different private pilots and such. And one of the guys said, yeah, he was in an airport one time. George Bush literally went in the door to a bathroom and passed the other George Bush coming out.
Wow.
So this is one of those things that they just do. So is it a bad thing? No, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But we're in the middle of, you remember those old, what is it? It was a Spy versus Spy books that were out. I used to love those things. Remember those?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we're in the middle of Spy versus Spy.
Oh, we are. It's definitely a spy war.
See if I can bring up Spy versus Spy. We're going to have a blast from the past here. I love Spy versus Spy. Watch them set each other up.
What do you think is at the very top of all this under God? What do you think this is all about? I mean, my theory is that it's the banking. It's always money, and it's something big. So like, it has to be money in the banks. The Fed and all these Feds. These central banks in every country. There must be a war over that.
What if we go back to like the Q posts a minute, because I believe in evaluating everything. I love Q. Yeah. I love the Q posts. I think it was fantastic. And anybody that I've ever seen that criticizes it has never really looked into it.
No, they have no idea. They're watching NBC or CNN.
They watch all of these people that are QAnon who have taken Q and made it into QAnon, and they're making it into money, right? Which is nonsense. The Q posts were pure posts that showed up on 4chan, 8chan, and 8kun. That's it. Anything past that was aggregated by somebody else. Now there's some great aggregators out there. Q Alerts is one that I like to watch. There's a bunch of them that I'll go back into but it's just things to make you ask questions. Mm-hmm. And on my Telegram channel, there's Oz Trump that comes on once in a while. And I'm going to give a shout out to like Q Trekkie and Oz Trump and Ned and some of these people that I know are for real researchers. They're anons. And I've talked to a few of them personally because I get their phone numbers and I talk to them. But Oz Trump will come on and he posts a lot of Q post stuff on my channel in the comments. And when you look at those, future proofs, past type stuff is still going on. You can see that there were things that were given to us to look into and study. Mm-hmm. When President Trump said that they were giving the nation back to we the people, how are you going to give it back to we the people that have been brainwashed for decades in the illegal, unlawful child grooming education system, as evidenced by the porn and all the other crap they put in our school. And, and then you've got the grooming, programming, and fake stream media and such that has dulled our senses to accept the violence as just, this is normal. No, it's not normal. None of this is normal.
Right.
And, I would charge everybody, you know what? Shut that stupid TV off in mainstream media because it's idiot content, which is actually making it in your brain to affect the way you see the world. Yes. One of the best things anybody could do, shut it off. Just shut it up. You could even shut off Brandenburg News Network for a while, and I wouldn't care. if you shut everything off. Because if you get yourself off of things and get into the real world, and start, instead of listening to what people tell you to think, that's how we turn it around. But anyhow, Q got people thinking and researching. It was brilliant.
Right. Definitely. It woke people up. It woke up a lot of people that could spread it to more people and more people. And look how many people are awake to this stuff now.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think the central banking plays a large role in it. So does insurance. The insurance industry is tied into so many things. It's unbelievable. I still think there's more stuff behind that. However, those are two big ones that are easy to investigate. And one that I brought up yesterday too, that that deserves to be looked into a little closer. And I haven't seen a lot of people actually looking into this. I've been kind of keeping an eye on them for, probably at least 15 years now. But SoftBank out of Japan has got some really weird connections to things. They own a ton of the companies that do communications, and large shareholders in the SoftBank investment group come from a lot of countries that you probably don't want running your communications infrastructure.
Well, that was like originally a tech company, right? The SoftBank, they invested in all the
that was part of it. They do a lot of tech stuff, but they do a lot of non-tech stuff. I think originally it started as just a kind of a generic investment group, and has since grown to be an awful lot of communication stuff. An awful lot of the websites that people use on a daily basis are internally owned by SoftBank. The company that does all of the processors for basically every portable device, ARM, got bought up by SoftBank. There's an awful lot of, if I remember right, I'd have to look into this, but I don't know if they still own it. But at one point in time, I believe they owned most of it. Was like, I think, a controlling share in Broadcom, which is one of the big chip manufacturers that makes all of the radio chips for, like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 4G, 5G, all of that kind of stuff. A lot of that comes from Broadcom. And if I remember right, and I think this went through one or two levels of indirection, where SoftBank owned a company that then owned like a more than, it was a majority share, I think, in Broadcom. And that one's been a few years, so that may have gotten shuffled around a little bit, and I may be a little fuzzy on the details. But SoftBank is, they fly under the radar pretty far, but there's some real interesting connections at SoftBank.
Well, I think, like Donna said, all these big companies are involved. I mean, tell me one that's not.
Yeah.
Every big company, international company, and conglomerates, and big, even like from cereal companies to the NGOs, they're all involved in this.
They're all involved. Well, Ford was a globalist, even for Ford the car. So I need to take you guys down another path that leads back to Amway, of course, since Betsy DeVos decided to poke me and screw her.
Example.
It's like to go to the Ford Museum. I did post a bunch of stuff in there, but that Ford Museum, just so you know, it's not a Ford Museum. It's a Kissinger Museum. And I did another tour there this week with somebody to show her my point on why this was actually a globalist museum. And it's really about Kissinger rather than Ford. But you got to know what you're looking at. Mm-hmm. And when once you see it and see the symbolism and see what they're actually putting out there through the pictures, then all of a sudden it becomes real clear that what they're telling you and what's reality are not matching up. So I want to show you something else here. Another one to go down for anybody out there who's an anon or who's a researcher, check this out. So here is Melinda Gates, supposedly, and Guys, this is a guy playing this.
Oh
I'm
my
sorry.
goodness.
I'm not buying this crap. It's like, look at the difference.
Oh my goodness.
It's like you've got I don't know how many Bill Gates there are out there, but I don't know what's going on here, but that ain't, I'm not buying that. Okay.
Yeah.
Just so you know, guys, that ain't her. And here, you've got an actual woman here. I'm not even sure what's going on here.
Yeah.
But you know what's real funny
But is it real? Is it real? Is it AI? Did someone manipulate it?
I don't know. Did you ever see the program? I was obsessed about this for a while. This person doesn't exist.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that program. And but there's how many incarnations of these people? Don't believe what you see. You can't
trust your eyes anymore.
They can fake almost anything. Let me bring that site up in case this is kind of a weird way to go off the grid. I was going to show you. I got a new book. It's on making flat pattern, designing clothes using flat pattern method.
Oh,
so
cool.
I like to sew. I like to do anything project wise. All projects are good to Donna Brandenburg. You know.
Yeah, this is this today's not off the grid. It's off the topic.
Yeah, there you go. I've got a new.
Did you see Ford that is in trouble? That they sold all the data. Did you see that article?
Yes. Yeah.
Yesterday? Did I see it on your site maybe?
Let me see here.
Telegram. I don't remember where I saw it, but they sold all the drivers' data. So everywhere you go in your car, and when you connect your phone to the car, it takes all your contacts, everything. They sold all that.
Well, and the problem with this is that this is how the government is getting around anti-spy technology. It's just like all of the camera technology that are on our highways to watch people and, you know, the traffic reports and all that. Guess what? They don't have to spy on us. They go ahead and do these private partnerships. Bam, they got all they need. It's the same thing that was going on with Five Eyes.
That's how the CIA works. You know, they're really not supposed to be, you know, doing anything in the continental United States. So what they do is they set up NGOs and private companies in contract with them, and they do it.
Yep.
Here we go. Here's one. I'm not sure if this is the best article. So when I research online, you're going to get what I find. So Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Oh, these guys do some great work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. A recent New York Times article, Cashmere here, reported how everyday moments in your car like these create a data footprint for your driving habits and routine, that is, are being sold to insurance companies. So this kind of almost sounds like the personal credit. What is it? Personal credit scores.
Yep.
Right.
Social
credit scores. That's what it is. So OnStar Smart Driver Program is one example of an internet-connected service that collects driver data and sends it to car manufacturers, then sells its digital driving profile to third-party data brokers like LexisNexis, Verisk, and from their data brokers. Well, you know what? What's amazing is if you don't think that the government's not buying this data to try to, you know, mash it in with all of your social media stuff, I've got a bridge to sell you.
Well, I can see this being a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, all this technology could be good and bad.
Yeah, use it on the bad guys.
Insurance companies can use it. You know, if you opted in for that and you're a good driver, it can see that, you know, you don't speed, you stop at stop signs, whatever. And, you know, you drive on roads that have a lower incidence of accidents and times a day, and maybe you get a better rate on your insurance. But you should opt into that.
But that also means that the people not doing that are getting a higher rate on their insurance and thereby being punished.
And maybe they should, you know, but it should be optional and it should be transparent and not be going on behind our back. And the government shouldn't have anything to do with it.
But how do you know the government doesn't have anything to do with the insurance companies?
Oh my goodness, what a great point there.
Yeah.
Why else would they be requiring us to wear seatbelts? Because they're so concerned about us.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. They don't give a crap about us.
And ban fireworks for forever until they unbanned fireworks here in Michigan. And then lo and behold, not a whole lot actually changed, did it?
No.
Do you guys remember
Michigan got more money.
Do you guys remember that first year that the fireworks were legal? All fireworks, man, it was
that was
like
crazy.
it was like being in like I don't know, downtown Beirut. I mean, there was so much going on. They were like, holy crap, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, when they figured out how much tax revenue they were losing to Ohio from Michiganders going there to get their fireworks, then they decided to make them legal. They don't care if you blow your finger off or anything.
No, they could care less.
No,
It's just like the protecting kids CBS. Do they want to keep kids safe? No, absolutely not. They're in there to attack families, break families apart. And, I'm just saying right now, anybody that's a part of this that is like trafficking children, because we know what's happening and we have the data, we have the facts that this is happening. And that goes for Catholic services, Lutheran services, Bethany Christian services. I think you should probably look into this. I actually knocked apart the 990s from Bethany Christian Services years ago when we were fighting a refugee resettlement in Alma. And I'm like going, you couldn't even make this stuff up. How much money that they go through there. For Bethany Christian Services, I think I remember correctly, it was $4.5 million a year. I mean, these are big organizations, and they had 35 or so other entities registered in other states, but there was no money going through them. And they had an international filing also that was weird that I found. But half of their business went into refugee resettlement. And they're billing themselves an adoption agency and all this. No, half of it, foster care. No, that was a small part of it. The biggest part was refugee resettlement, because the freaking government is like dispersing money, like Tic Tacs. They're sitting there money to these things to move people around like Tic Tacs coming out of a case.
It's all our tax money is funding all these NGOs, and they all have fronts that they're doing good things and these wonderful names tied to them, but they're destroying the country and people.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I've got Jonathan Cagle is backstage right now, and I'm going to bring him on in a little bit here. And sorry that I'm going to have to adjust the schedule a little bit on Fridays. If you guys want to stay on and talk to and listen to Jonathan a little bit, he's great. I love Jonathan. Then I'll have you guys on for a little bit. Then I'll go back to just Jonathan in a little bit. So I'm going to go to our break here so I can stretch around. You know what I found out? So I did 4.5 hours on with Bob Terry and such on what day was that? Was that Wednesday? Was it Wednesday or Tuesday?
I think it was Wednesday.
Yeah, it was a long show. So 4.5 hours. And so after a while, I'm sitting here wiggling around in the chair trying to keep the blood circulating in my legs and such. And so anyhow, the break does me good, even if it's to stand up just for a few minutes here in my real news for real people, by real people at the kitchen table, sort of. Here's my little backdrop here. So we clone my backdrop. So I'll be right back and just going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Morning and welcome to the next segment of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg. It is the 7th day of June 2024, and welcome to our show. So I'm going to invite all of our guests on and get this party going. So, everybody's taking a break here. So David will be back in a minute. Jonathan, I don't see you. Is your camera on?
Yeah, give me 1 second, Donna.
Okay, good morning. So anyhow, back to what we're talking about, these public-private partnerships and then spying. What else can you talk about on that issue, Ralph? Let's talk about what I started this out with, the spying under the bridges, because I think that's really interesting, because I need to quick send a text. So talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, so that was a real interesting one, in that the way that they structured that basically, so the government wanted to be able to track everybody's cars, but they couldn't put GPSs on everybody's cars. So what they did is instead, because they also could not spy on people in that way legally and get away with it, what they did is they would lease the bottoms of the highway overpasses to a private company doing license plate scanning. And that private company doing license plate scanning then did all of the data collection for who was where at what time, and then they turned around and sold that data, not just to the government, because if they sold it just to the government, it would raise some red flags. They sold it to, I think, one or two other companies, but their primary customer was the government. So the government got their data of spying on all of Americans' driving habits and tracking them, while not actually doing it themselves. Which, just like the Five Eyes strategy of have somebody else do it and then use their data.
Well, AT&T did the same thing. So AT&T crossed the Canadian border up there in order to just cross the border and come back in, because it gave them the ability to grab that data on Canadian soil and use it against Americans. You ever feel like an antelope on the Serengeti out there? You remember the old nature documentaries where they say, now we're on the Serengeti and there's this herd of like 1,000 gazelles that are trying to get away from the predator and such. And then I feel like we're there. We're like the gazelles out there, and the government's like this
Lion,
cheetah or a lion out there waiting to eat us alive. That's what it feels like. So I want to show you something else here a minute while we're waiting for Jonathan to get on. I love Jonathan. Cool. You're cool, Jonathan. I know you can hear us, but you're cool. So I'm going to be at Turning Point next week, by the way, the People's Convention, and wanted to let everybody know that I've gone to another Turning Point event, and it's actually a lot of fun. Fun people. It's interesting. But here are all the speakers that are going to be there. There you go. The rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, and the cast and crew here. So I actually think Vivek's a pretty nice guy. I wouldn't want to be, president, but nice guy. And no go. Tulsi Gabbard, big no. But it's like all of these events that you go to, there's good and bad everywhere. I've met Matt Gaetz several times, and such, but good and bad people everywhere you go. You got to be able to think for yourself and sift through them a little bit. And but anyhow, there you go. More to be announced soon. So it's not real expensive to go there either. So if anybody wants to go, show up at this and you'll have a really good time. I think they do a pretty good job. And I want to thank everybody in all of these events that are going on. Reawaken is on in Detroit this weekend. That's a event that General Flynn will be at that one, and a bunch of good guys will be there. But there's a mix wherever you go. There's a mix of people. But this, except BNN, we have good people on here, or Donna Brandenburg fries their tails before you. So
in one case, lets them fry themselves. One case I remember.
Yeah, there was one case, red glasses fried themselves on here. Well, there's two cases, and another guy that was trying to set me up. That didn't work out so well for him, and I think he's still stinging from the pummeling that he got from me, but that's okay. He'll either repent or get over it. So, Jonathan, what's happening today in Jonathan World? Welcome.
Hey, Donna.
So I'm introducing you always as Jonathan Cagle, the investigator of government corruption.
That's one of the nicest things that anybody's ever said about me. Honestly, I've been called much worse.
It's meant as a high compliment. So I thought I'd have you on today again, because the last few times you were on, I could sit here and talk to you seriously for like an entire day and just sit and listen to you talk, because you're like Ivan Raiklin, and Ivan's great too. I can just sit back here and enjoy the show like everybody else is doing, because you guys have so much information in your heads, and David and Ralph are the same way. You know, there's so much information that real researchers actually have at their disposal in their heads. It's inspiring. And for everybody out there right now, if you could pass the links on to other people too, because Jonathan needs a place to speak, because the ones that are actually doing the work are the ones that are silenced or booted off. And you got booted off X, didn't you?
Yeah, February
Recently?
2nd. February
yeah.
2nd
This year?
of this year. Yeah.
Wow, what did you do?
It was
Told
around
the
the same
truth.
it was around the same time that Stephen Crowder and his team's information overlapped with mine as far as unraveling a child trafficking network that ties in BlackRock and Goldman Sachs and the ADL and a couple of other people. And I had information that he needed. He had information that I needed. So I connected with his team, sent them all the intel that I had. And then I think maybe it was, 4 or 5 days later, my account was gone. But you could see in the week leading up to my suspension, like my engagement, let's say, might be 6 million people this week. All right. And then the next week, all the other metrics are the same or even slightly increased, but my engagement is 3 million. And then the day before, my engagement was like, I don't know, half of that or whatever. So I could tell they were looking for, anything they could to axe me.
And have you got your account back, or is it still gone?
I haven't, and I honestly doubt that I will anytime soon, at least. So I've got a alternate account that I'm using to share information, and I was on Truth Social for a while in that 3 months interim period.
Yeah.
They didn't boot you off, did they?
What's that?
Did Truth Social boot you off too?
No.
Okay.
No, so he's in good shape now, so we can still connect with him. But nice thing for me is that I got your cell phone. Bam. And so welcome to Brandenburg News Network, where the truth reigns supreme. So what I'm kind of interested in this child trafficking network, because I'm going to tell you what, CPS, I believe, is involved in it. I don't know if you've gone down the trail on the DNR, but that's been one of mine lately to go down, because I think, and I found something else that's really weird. There's a security company called DK that was guarding all the gates to Grayling. When I was up at Grayling, I had pretty much the run of the place. I could publish or take pictures of anything, which tells me that I was being shown what they wanted me to see. That's okay.
DK
I can make my own assumptions of things. So DK was guarding the gate of this supposed military base and the airfield. I saw not one military personnel there, not one. So you've got a private security firm called DK guarding the base. And so I started doing some digging into DK. Very, very interesting. There's a person that's behind it that's got sort of an Indian name. And then lo and behold, just like Bethany Christian Services, they have satellite offices all over the place in the United States. So then what do? You go and you start looking at the map at where these places are located. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm a little suspect when you've got something down a 2-track, a security company down a 2-track in the middle of, let's just say like a national forest type area, and no reason for them to be there in a very, very next to a very, very small town. I mean, there's some things that really need to be checked on. And why weren't they any military? But anyhow, they own 4.6 million acres in Michigan that they own this land, and all the waterways, all the logging rights, and all the mineral rights. And
We're back to the DNR now.
The DNR. I'm sorry. This is the DNR. It seems like they're kind of working together because they were all involved on that base. Thanks for clarifying that, Ralph. And so when you look at how these organizations kind of seem to work together, it's like, what the living heck? The DNR or the government owns the land, and they allow certain entities to be on it, but not other entities. So DNR owns the land. DK is allowed to be on the land. And DNR is clear-cutting the trees and taking the mineral rights. This is like, if people don't think that there's some weaponized BS going on there, I got a bridge to sell you. But the DNR, they're protecting our land. No, they're not. They're exploiting it, people.
I every time you say DNR, I can't help but think do not resuscitate. Like my my science background, but I'm like, who's dying? But anyway, yeah,
Department of
it's
Natural Resources.
Well, it's
yeah.
it's not the Department of Environmental Quality anymore. It is the Department of Natural Resources. So clearly, it's all about just taking all the natural resources.
Oh yeah.
Whenever you think about an operation like this, you always have your first question has to be, okay, how have they gotten away with it for this long? Which indicates to you that there's people in certain positions for a reason that are yes men or are, obstructors. They're the watchdogs, so to speak, for the operation. And I think of a very good example of that being HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, which most people have become familiar with in the last few months. Mayorkas was on the board when he was nominated by Biden to be the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. And under Obama, Mayorkas, Rodham, and Terry McAuliffe had this little racket that they were running across the border where they would basically do pay-for-play fast pass green cards. And they would offer anybody who invested $500,000 or more into one of Mayorkas, McAuliffe's, or Rodham's businesses, they would expedite and pretty much push to the front of the list green cards for themselves and their families. And that was a racket that they had been doing for a number of years. And then when they got caught, Mayorkas went down there himself, not to clean up the racket, but to expedite the process and make sure they got as many through before it got shut down. And you look at HIAS today, and the executive chairman and the chairman of the executive committee is a guy by the name of Jeffrey Blattner. And that might be foreign. That name might be foreign to most viewers, but Jeffrey Blattner was Ted Kennedy's chief counsel back in '68, and he's the guy that told Ted Kennedy to tell his brother Robert not to run for president against incumbent Lyndon B. Johnson. And we know what happened. We know the rest of the story when Robert basically said, "No, I'm going to run anyway," and next thing you know, he's dead. So that's kind of where we're at, and it's not by accident. And the story is that Saran gets all the blame, and that's a whole other rabbit hole that I don't necessarily buy. But Jeffrey Blattner is one of those watchdogs. He's in that position because he's been deeply part of the plot of America that we know it as today since the 60s, if not earlier.
I'm going to go ahead and post this link. I've been trying to post links as we go on my Telegram channel, which is at Brandenburg #4 MI. Jeffrey Blattner.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see if we can get this. Okay. You know, something else that's really odd about this whole thing is how much, and I know the Anti-Defamation League is going to come after me. Well, screw everybody at this point, because you know what, we have to get past this having oh no, these people that I identify with are being questioned. Those are exactly who we need to be questioning, because I don't care, I'm a Christian, and I expect to have every single person, whether they claim to be Christian or not, to be questioned, because I'm not going to protect them just because of their I have the second link is from, oh, maybe that didn't come through. Hang on a minute. Just because somebody takes a title on doesn't mean anything. If somebody says a Republican, I don't know if they are or not, because we've got so many infiltrators. I don't know if somebody is in, says they're Jewish, if they are or not. Who knows? They could be something totally. Same thing with Christian or whatever. They're just labels, and they're highly misleading, and they're being used to mislead us. So
yeah, one of the most underreported factions that is part of all of this is the fake Catholics, in my opinion, tied to the Vatican, that are masquerading as Christians. They're really Satanists, just like a lot of these Jewish people who's, like Jesus said, they say they're Jews, but they're the synagogue of Satan.
right.
There's no difference. There's a faction within the Catholic Church, unfortunately, that does exactly the same racket, and they use their religion as not, a spiritual calling or a representation of their love and devotion towards God, but a cloak of armor and a shield, if you will, like a human shield, weaponizing the good faith of everybody else in their religions, and it's atrocious.
There you go. I've got those links posted to HIAS and Jeffrey Blattner for people to go down and look down through this and try to figure this out. So where do you want to go this morning? What's on your mind, Jonathan? I mean, you always have a million things you're looking into. I had Bob Terry on this week, and I love Bob. He's great. He did mention you, by the way, so I know that, there's some connections there. And the things he was talking about was Microsoft's backdoor and being able to get in, not leave a forensic trail, as well as the involvement with Serbia. I'm going to throw something out there and see if you can make some connections with Citibank, and some of the things that have gone on with Citibank, and some of the fact that it looks like that Microsoft owns Dominion.
Well, Citibank also is one of the large shareholders of SoftBank.
And Citibank also, they had a very much a Trump supporter running Citibank, and they fired him, so they got a new guy on there right now. So there's a question there, but these people are all connected. So what do you have to say about this, Jonathan? What are your thoughts?
I have a lot. How much time do we have, Donna?
I will keep the camera running, buddy, because I love listening to you.
By the way, hey Ralph, it's been a while since I've seen you, my friend. Hope you've been well. But Citibank is one of the 13 or so big banks that basically decided arbitrarily, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, that certain companies were going to be the winners in the IT space. Citibank, it's the usual players that we've all heard of: World Bank, IMF, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Bank of America. Citigroup is certainly part of that. And a lot of this, not to get too conspiratorial, but everything that I'm saying is already been vetted. We know and have the receipts on all of this stuff. Since post 9/11, there was a new financial system that was created through FinCEN and OFAC and AML and the Patriot Act, and it was designed to basically make it. We didn't know it at the time, but it was designed to make it easier for the 1% to stay the 1%, and they kind of pulled the ladder up behind themselves and made sure that you and me, proletariat, can't really ever challenge their influence or their power. So unfortunately, the rules apply to us. They don't apply to them. And Citigroup is in that. Blackstone is part of that. Apollo, BlackRock actually spun out of Blackstone. And I know you saw this, Donna. I think this might have something to do with why we're on today. Is the thread I made probably 4 or 5 days ago, titled September 10th, 2001, and what was going on with Rumsfeld and the 2.3 trillion in transactions that they couldn't account for at the Pentagon, and where that money went. And we think that money, we have good reason to believe it is subsidizing everything that we're dealing with today. And whether it be rigged markets, like has anybody in this call seen over the last couple of days the GameStop situation where Robinhood once again has prevented people from being able to buy stocks? You guys have seen that, right? So in the aftermath of September 11th, you think to yourself, all right, how are they able to do that today? Well, in the aftermath of September 11th, you had platforms like Aladdin that was developed by BlackRock. And for what it's worth, BlackRock is Mossad. The co-founder with Larry Fink, his name is Rob Capito. He's the president. He is Mossad. BlackRock, their Aladdin platform is used by a number of banks and the Bank of Israel since 2019. But you also have platforms like Lab 41, which was developed by Incutel which is the CIA. You also have platforms like Rigetti, which is quantum computing market manipulation that was developed by a guy by the name of Taran Naidu. He's former IDF. And I can't remember the first name of the guy the company's named after, but he was the longtime quantum computing guy for IBM. And a lot of the software that we use today, the networks that we use today, the banks that we use today came in the wake of all of that. And that gave them the ability, and it's no better evidence than by 2012, when you had the coordinated crash of the crypto markets. And Gary Gensler had ultimate oversight over all of that. And thankfully, he's in their pockets because they like the idea of digital currency. They don't like the idea of you and me creating digital currency that is successful. They want to control it. And so the same people that are building voting machines and the platforms like Dominion or ESNS or Hardin or Civic or all of our voter registration systems are the same people, these banks that decided arbitrarily which institutions, especially with regards to networks, are going to be the winners that we deal with today. And so, does everybody remember J. Alex Halderman? You guys know who that is?
Oh,
yeah, and I want to show you this. Here's Claudia Sheinbaum, the Jewish new president of Mexico, standing with Larry Fink. And I mean, those connections are indisputable.
She's a chemical engineer in the vein of Janet Napolitano, and she is there for a clear purpose: the consolidation of control of energy. For what they're trying to create is basically the North American region between Mexico, Canada, and the United States. But anyway, J. Alex Halderman, he testified in 2016 when they believed that voting machines were vulnerable to attack because Trump won. He testified before the Senate. Yeah, they can be easily hacked, and he famously took like an ink pen in, what was it, like a few seconds, and he had access to the machines. And then in 2020, when their guy won, all of a sudden, no, voting machines are secure and they can't be hacked. And you got Chris Krebs saying it's the safest and most secure election ever. Well, it turns out, and this was about 2 weeks ago, Donna. So it turns out J. Alex Halderman is part of this organization called the ISRG, the Internet Security Research Group, that he didn't disclose, is funded by all of these same big banks, Citigroup certainly being one of them, Goldman Sachs, but also a lot of the networks that sprung up and took kind of prominence after September 11th, like obviously GoDaddy and Akamai, which Akamai and Gandhi are part of the whole smurfing Act Blue stuff, but that's another discussion. But they're funded by these same networks. And as we've seen with science over the last several years, scientists have this tendency to come to the conclusions of whatever favors those who sign their checks. Mm-hmm. And J. Alex Halderman is no different. And Peter Berniger over in Georgia, as well as Chris, I can't remember his last name, and I apologize, Chris. I know you'll probably watch this, but works with Peter. They basically discovered that the ACLU had unfettered access in Georgia to the ballots.
Is that Chris Kyla?
Gleason.
Gleason. Okay, Chris Gleason. Yeah, Chris Kyle is an investigator in Michigan.
Well,
and so I did. Peter is cool. I love Peter.
He's awesome.
Another connection there too. You bring up the ISRG. Their root certificate is the one that a good portion of SSL connections across the internet, well, TLS now, but SSL connections across the internet for securing websites, a lot of those go back to the ISRG root certificates.
I love Ralph. He knew exactly where I was going with this. So there's a kind of basically a consortium in the ISRG. And one of those companies that is involved in this consortium is something called Let's Encrypt. All right. And for the root certificates, or you might call them certificate issuers for all of these companies, you have the big banks that got together and decided this company called R3, so just the letter R, the number 3, was going to be the winner of the root certificate issuers for all of society arbitrarily. And our ERIC voter data, the ericstates.org domain, which is the ERIC's domain URL, rather, it sits on R3. And you can see when you look at the board of directors with regards to R3, it's a lot of globalists, United Nations, London, UK, CBDC developers. And so that's interesting to me in its own right, just if I don't know anything else about it. Unfortunately, in the last few days, we've learned a hell of a lot more about it. So let's see. So J. Alex Halderman is part of ISRG. He doesn't disclose it. On that same board with him is Jennifer Granick, of the ACLU. She's an ACLU attorney. And Anchal Gupta is her name. She's the director of security for Facebook. And so you remember our last conversation, Donna, we talked about how we found that they were sending our ERIC voter data over to Beijing to a personal website of Peter Chu, who was one of Mark Zuckerberg's senior executives at Meta. And that domain was hosted by Timothy Alexander Steiner, who's the former general counsel of Alibaba. And if your viewers don't know anything about the Chinese part of the infiltration of America, they need to learn about 3 entities: Alibaba, Tencent, and Tsinghua University. TSINGHUA, Tsinghua University. And you got Elon Musk, you got Mark Zuckerberg, you got Steven Schwartzman of BlackRock, you got David Rubenstein, chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations. Timothy Alex Steiner is Council on Foreign Relations as well. And they were sending our voter data to China using Facebook. And then J. Alex Halderman just decides to not disclose that he sits on this board with an ACLU attorney who had unfettered access. And the director of security who is actually sending the data overseas. And the Let's Encrypt company that we found running Maltigos, Alien Vault, Spiderfoots, and Shodans and Who Is reports is the company that one of the major companies that was involved in the hack of not only Michigan, but also Arizona and a number of other institutions using those backdoors you mentioned at the beginning of my time on.
So
yeah,
you
I
bring
saw
up
the
Alibaba.
Alien Vault yesterday in the documentation by Bob Terry.
Say again, Donna, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I saw the Alien Vault stuff when I was on with Bob Terry.
Yeah, the thing I love about Alien Vault, it's now got AT&T backing, but it's supported by the CIA. So I like using their own tools and make them tell me that tool is not credible. Okay, it's not credible. Well, you're supporting it. You use it. So explain that, so.
So yeah, you bring up Alibaba, and one of the major players in Alibaba is the SoftBank Group.
Yeah, so the top 5 shareholders of Alibaba, SoftBank is certainly one of them. They might actually be number 1. Then you have the 2 co-founders, Martin Lau and Jack Ma. And then Goldman Sachs is number 4. So why is Goldman Sachs randomly number 4? Well, the Council on Foreign Relations that we just talked about, in 2020 and 2021, their major funding came from 4 entities. One of those was the Atlantic Council. The chairman of the Atlantic Council is on the board of directors and is the chairman of the Goldman Sachs Foundation at Goldman Sachs. His name is John F.W. Rogers. So Goldman Sachs is basically an Ashkenazi Jewish, like Mossad IDF intelligence apparatus that moonlights or pretends to be a legitimate RIA operating domestically. And
No.
you look at Catherine Rumler as their general. I can't believe they had the gall to hire Catherine Rumler as their general counsel, but they're not even hiding it anymore right now.
What's really interesting is you go back to the Atlantic Council, and Ron Weiser, who was the chairman of the Republican Party in the state of Michigan, was on the Atlantic Council. So when people start looking at these political parties, it's all a sham. It's smoke and mirrors. That's what it is. And you really have to dig into knowing who you're supporting, not just because somebody says, "Oh, this is a nice person." You know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You know, and nice people. I want somebody like the rightful president of the United States who has mean tweets and says what needs to be said, you know, or Jonathan Cagle, somebody who will come on and throw everybody under the bus, you know, who's doing the wrong.
My whole cabinet would be fired in a week. But anyway, so remember the three entities, Donna, that I said as far as China, if you become familiar with no others, become familiar with these three. Alibaba was one. Who are the other two?
Tsinghua University.
Tsinghua University. And who was that last one?
That's the one where I got screwed up because I was taking notes here and I missed it. So I was going to ask you, what was it?
Tencent.
Tencent.
One word. So it's not two words. It's just one word, Tencent. And you mentioned Michigan, and that's why I come back to that. So the primary founder of Tencent is Pony Ma. I think he's Jack Ma's brother, actually. But the president of Tencent is Martin Lau. All right. And who is Martin Lau? Well, he's a University of Michigan alumni and the former head of like global private equity for Goldman Sachs. Mm-hmm. And so when you think about the networks that they're building and the control apparatus that they want to have, where they control the environment and all the back doors and can be honest or dishonest about exploits. There's a guy by the name of Dave Loftus that everybody on your program needs to become familiar with. So it's like I've got a loft upstairs where I sleep, LOFT, and then US like United States. Dave Loftus of Ann Arbor Networks. He is been chiefly involved in a lot of these network integrity and disintegrity forensics reports that we've seen. His name keeps showing up. So I'm sure that he's very familiar with Martin Lau. And there's, Michigan is just, there's so much I could say about it with Jocelyn Benson and Gretchen Whitmer and Dana Nessel. Dana Nessel, for example, if you want me to go into like some important information like on those two people, Dana Nessel and Jocelyn Benson, I will. If it's too off topic, we can just finish this and come back to it.
You know what? We can go wherever you want to go, because if there's a reason for us to go there in your mind, then that's okay too. Because all of this stuff is so interrelated and these people are so interconnected. It's incredible. So like Whitmer appoints the head of the DNR. The DNR is a lapdog for Whitmer. And if you think that Whitmer's telling the truth, I can't help you at this point in time. But if Whitmer is non-trustworthy, which she is, she committed treason and should have been removed. Now she's got an organization, the DNR, who says they're protecting Michigan, and they are not. You've got the universities who's tied into all of these people, Michigan State as well as U of M, and Grand Valley is a sleeper to a lot of people. Grand Valley, which is another state university, that's a sleeper, and I can give you the background on that from a guy that's the largest landowner in the state of Michigan. Is absolutely connected to Grand Valley, and I've been seeing a lot of sleeper stuff coming out of Grand Valley lately, which is really kind of crazy. So because the university is easy to launder money through.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when you've got a racket like this of this magnitude, it's impossible to pull off or even get really started unless you have cooperation and really coordination with intelligence apparatuses. And unfortunately, our CIA and Israeli intelligence and our NSA and IDF Unit 8200 are basically besties. They're almost indistinguishable at this point. And so when you look at, organizations like AIPAC that buy all of our politicians, and they then go on social media and brag about how all of their politicians that they supported won their elections. Well, it's kind of rubbing our noses in it, isn't it? I mean, how do you just arbitrarily know that somebody's going to win when you support them unless you're influencing outcomes? Well, there's a guy by the name of Viktor Ostrovsky. He is a former IDF. He enlisted at the age of 14, did 20 years. In the last 14 months of his career, he joined Mossad. And he became a burn notice, whistleblower, if you will, after 14 months because he was appalled by what Mossad was doing. And so he wrote 2 books about Mossad and its impact on the global geopolitical space. The first book is called By Way of Deception. And for those who don't know, Mossad's slogan is literally by way of deception, thou shalt make war. This was basically Mossad's impact on the rest of the world from the Israeli point of view. So from inside Mossad looking outward. The second book he wrote was called The Other Side of Deception. And that one was writing about Mossad from the perspective of everybody else around the world, every other nation that has been globally affected by the efforts of this most ruthless and subversive intelligence apparatus that Israel has. Well, in the second book, he and his co-authors decided that they were going to leave out a couple of things that would be too shocking, that would make people really upset with the Israelis. And that was the fact that ADL, AIPAC, and UJA, or United Jewish Appeal, are actually arms of Mossad. So they're not just lobbies. AIPAC is not just a lobby that doesn't want to register with FARA. It's literally Israeli intelligence.
What was the last one? AIPAC, ADL, and what?
UJA, so United Jewish Appeal. And UJA Federation of New York is their primary branch. So whenever I say UJA, I'm almost always referring to that branch. They're chaired by, to give you some perspective, UJA Federation was chaired by Larry Silverstein right before the towers were hit. So today they're chaired by a guy by the name of Mark Rowan, who is the co-founder of Apollo Global Management. His co-founder, Leon Black, was one of Jeffrey Epstein's longest time associates. And you see these secretaries of state and these AGs and these governors that get installed into these battleground states, and they all seem to be, despite Republican successes or conservative successes everywhere else in the country, they seem to have avoided that somehow. Like, the status quo or common, views and values and the temperature of the United States changes just so long as you go into battleground states or something. It's absurd. But Katie Hobbs is one of those perfect examples. Brad Raffensperger is a perfect example, but obviously Jocelyn Benson and Dana Nessel are perfect examples as well. And Dana Nessel, if you guys remember, her political director, Samantha Wall, was stabbed to death on October 21st of last year. And you're like, God, that's terrible. Well, there's a lot more to it. Dana
Icarus
Nessel
got too close to the sun there is what I think happened there, and they had to get rid of her. And that's what I took away from that whole story.
Yeah, here's why they steal elections, because Dana Nessel, her campaign in 2022, her re-election campaign, was run by a group called the Katz-Watson Group. So Katz Watson Group. It's chaired by a woman by the name of Fran Katz-Watson. She is former AIPAC. And if we know and we establish that certain entities, we should see them as what they really are as opposed to what they pervade themselves to be, it helps us make a lot of these connections much more quickly. So if we don't see AIPAC and we see Mossad, if we don't see ADL and we see Mossad, it makes it a whole lot easier for people to grasp, okay, this is not by accident. None of this is random or happening by chance. So Dana Nestle's campaign is run by the Katz Watson Group, who also runs campaigns for the Lincoln Project, the New Israel Fund, and JDCA, the Jewish Democratic Council of America, which supported Katie Hobbs, supported Jocelyn Benson, obviously, but it's a front for UJA. So you're like sitting there thinking, wait, JDCA, their chairman, Susan Stern, is the former chairman, the immediate former chairman of UJA Federation. So we're talking layers and layers of different entities operating as one collusive unit. And they certainly installed Dana Nessel, and they certainly installed Jocelyn Benson. And why is that? Well, Dana Nessel and Jocelyn Benson are very much on board with the genocide that's happening in Palestine. And I'm so sorry for what's happening to Palestinians and for the innocent Israelis that are dealing with the brushback of all of this. But basically, Samantha Wall, Dana Nessel's 2022 political director, was the president of the Isaac Agree Downtown Detroit Synagogue, but was also the founder of the Muslim Jewish Friendship Foundation, where she was pushing for this one state solution where Israelis and Palestinians live in harmony, and that Jews and Muslims can coexist in harmony. And that wasn't really, like you said a minute ago, got too close to the kitchen, as it were. Yeah, that really wasn't on the agenda of Dana of Mossad, really. And you guys all remember last year when Dana Nessel came out and admitted there was 8,000 to 10,000 fraudulent registrations. They at least conceded that in the 2022 elections. Okay,
11,000 is what they came up with from GBI, and that was just in Muskegon. And then Nessel passed it to the state police, which is the lapdogs of the government.
They're the worst.
And they did nothing with it. And then Nessel sits there like a 3-year-old girl with her hand in the cookie jar going, I don't know, I passed it on to somebody else. It's not my problem. It's like, come on, nobody's dumb enough to believe that story. She's still responsible for it. Turn her back on it. Let the crime be committed. This is our attorney general. Pathetic. Nessel, you're pathetic.
Jonathan,
yes, sir.
Question: what are those maps or whatever called, where you link all these companies and people together?
Dimensions and measures.
What are they called?
Dimensions and measures.
Have you done that?
Are you talking about the ones that I've posted, David?
I haven't seen any of your posts, but I've seen these complicated things where all these companies and people are all connected, and you can see how, with lines.
Well, Donna, if you go to my backup Twitter account, you can I've recently reposted some of the stuff from my original account. So there's a number of platforms that'll do that, David. One of the open source platforms that we use that we like a lot is Maltego. So it's like a milkshake, malt and then EGO. So not your id, but your super ego.
I'm trying to follow.
We've actually, my tech company is programming a Dimensions and Measures app, and because I didn't see anything out there that I really liked, so we're actually coming out with one, and we've got almost all the programming done on that and started loading it with information, and that's going to be really fun because I kind of have informants all over the place, which is kind of amazing. People are like, how does Brandenburg know this? Because I know a lot of people, and but when we all work together, we can fill these things out rather rapidly, and then people can see a visual. You have to have a graphic to see how this is all connected. So keep your eyes open. You were actually one of the first people I was going to share this with, because I think that this would be a great way to actually show people visually exactly how all these people are connected. Yeah. So dimensions and measures.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations on that, by the way, Donna.
Yeah, thank you. We do a lot of programming.
So last year they made that concession of whether it was 8 or 10 or 11,000, however many it was. Two things. Whatever number they concede, you should probably add an order of magnitude to it. So it was probably closer to 100,000 if I had to guess. But they conceded that about a week after we first, and I think you and I talked about this on the last time that I was on your show, Donna, is what we posted the forensics from the Michigan Elections Network on Twitter showing all of the vulnerabilities and the exploits. So think of Alien Vault as one step further beyond a MITRE CVE. So you basically identify an exploit in the system, not just a vulnerability, but a vulnerability that has been exploited. And Alien Vault generates what's called a pulse record. So you can go on Alien Vault, you can click the hyperlink, and it'll flesh out all the forensic data that is pertinent to that exploit. So whether it was a Trojan, malware, a hash, DDoS, what have you, the IP that it originated from, the capabilities of that hack, and basically Alien Vault is one big watchdog platform. So somebody's already given kind of commentary and descriptions of who was in the network and who it was and what they found. And so in Michigan, we found "'Tis the Season to Hack Michigan Elections." We saw MI voter hack. We saw how to access backdoors, Smartmatic to Dominion voting. It was just so cavalier. They were not even,
They don't even try to
careful.
hide this stuff anymore. It's like it's just right there in your face.
They don't care. They don't care because nobody's going to do anything. Nobody's going to be able to do anything.
Yeah, and going back to Alex Halderman, so we found an exploit, and if you want to write this down, you can, just so that you can, because I've written about it recently. If you want to be able to look it up, it was R3. So there's R3 again, the certificate issuer. .I, so just the letter I. .linker.org. So LENCR.org. So like Let's Encrypt. And it was J. Alex Halderman's ISRG peeps that were in the Michigan network and in other networks around the country, Maricopa not the least of which. But yeah, we fleshed out who these people are and what capabilities they have. You remember when Donald Trump's donations website was taken down about, I don't know, 4 or 5 days ago?
Yeah.
By some group, and I think the money was stolen. Well,
I didn't know that.
I hadn't heard about them getting it back.
Is it LINGER?
LENCR.
D-O, lender.
No, C is in cat.
Say that again. L-E-N.
So Roger, the number 3.
Yep.
Dot. Ivan. Dot. Lemon. Elephant. Nancy. Cat. Rachel.
Got it. Okay. .org.
How the heck did you find that?
Say again?
How the heck did you find that?
We're pretty good at what we do.
Heck yeah. That's
But
amazing.
This is weird. It brought up my file system when I put it into the bar on the browser. It brought up my file system.
Oh no.
You know why that is?
Why?
Because not only is the ericstates.org domain built on that, you also have other platforms like Tyler Technologies, it's supposedly based in Plano, Texas, but they have a huge presence in Connecticut. They're basically partners with Ericsson.
Oh boy, we know they're bad news.
Mm-hmm. And
well,
so
that's weird that it would bring up a file system when I'm searching in a browser.
Yeah,
Jonathan,
and so, yes, sir.
I have a quick question for you. just on a higher level, do you think that I could give you the name of any company, any huge, billion-dollar company, and you could find the connections to everything else? Is this just all just one hoax that we live in? That everything is all controlled, they're all connected, and we're just like the stupid people for believing any of this stuff is that we really have a life.
There's a good chunk
Freedom.
of it there's a good chunk of it that is, and I appreciate you asking that, because that kind of comes to the theme of why I've been working so relentlessly the past several weeks and months, because we only have 5 months, less than 5 months, until we're going to have another election. They are trying to create exactly what you just described. They're not all the way there yet, and I truly believe that if we're going to fight back against election fraud or market manipulation or open borders or digital ID or what comes after down the road, this is our last chance to do it, because the technology is advancing so fast through the development and the furtherance of content delivery network platforms like Akamai and Cloudflare. Mm-hmm. Facebook has even developed its own CDN recently, but the CDN network is designed to obfuscate the origin of infiltration. It certainly pawns itself and presents itself as a faster and more secure solution, but what it really does is protects the interests of those people that you just mentioned, making the rabbit trail much harder to follow. And they're not fully there yet, but they do absolutely want to create that. And the entities that are most behind it, especially as it relates to Dominion, are Carlyle Group, KKR, Henry Kravis, Blackstone, BlackRock, Vanguard is certainly involved. But as far as so they want us to get bogged down with looking at, okay, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are the biggest shareholders, and these are massive firms that invest across the board with everybody. Yeah. Well, what they don't look at is private equity that basically subsidizes these platforms, gets them off the ground, and they have actually the personal stake where all the money is made on the success of these platforms. And so Carlyle Group is one of the biggest ones as far as that's concerned. They own Dominion Voting because they are the largest shareholder of Staple Street. And Staple Street, as we know, owns 75.2% of Dominion. John Paulus owns, I think, 12.5%, and the rest of the shareholders split everything else. But you have platforms like BC Partners. That's one that your viewers need to become extremely familiar with, Donna.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. So, David, the reason that you would build something like this is because if you can control the network environment where all business and financial transactions exist now, if you can control that space, you can dictate the life and livelihoods of everybody. Yeah. You have ultimate control. And so you also have control over avoiding any accountability for your misdeeds. Like who's gonna peacefully, at least, hold you accountable if they can't find your fingerprints anywhere, or they can get into the back door of LexisNexis or Westlaw and just remove legal precedent that's unfavorable to them, or add legal precedent that doesn't exist. Like
that's what Bob Terry was talking about, the ability to go in and leave no footprint, change things, plant things, train people, change their elections. It's all right there. They can creep around like a bunch of rats in the dark.
They already do.
Nobody will even know that they're there. That's what's been going on.
Tori told us about that there's a database on every single person, and they can change it and change your record. They can give you a criminal history. They can make it so you can't be hired, fired, get a job, wherever they want.
Literally change an entire election. Please continue, Jonathan.
they basically, like, we know from Ed Snowden back in 2013 that NSA and IDF Unit 8200 and Solar Winds basically are sharing freely Americans' raw, unfiltered metadata back and forth. And then it goes even deeper than that. You have platforms like Ancestry.com and 23andMe that then share our genomic and our patient data with platforms like Genentech or Seagen that gets acquired by Pfizer. And now you're talking about they can tailor bioweapons specifically for Ralph and David while leaving Donna and me unaffected, or vice versa.
Yep.
So what they're becoming capable of is frightening. And that's why I'm so adamant about this election, because this is our last chance, in my opinion, to do something about it. But to go back to BC Partners, you guys saw the email that Peter Berger originally posted, and I gave some commentary on the people that were involved. So where Gorano Brodovich is talking to John Paulus, the CEO of Dominion, and he says, basically, they're Serbian operatives in Belgrade, where Dominion's global headquarters is. We're hacking into Michigan, and they got caught by white hats, and they were freaking out because not only were they caught, they were putting their pictures and names online. And they went to Gorana Brodovich and they said, what do we do? We're like, this is terrible. Like, they're going to, extradite us and hang us. And so Gorana Brodovich goes to John Paulus and says, what do we do? And John Paulus says, in the interest of security, Mike McGee is handling with K2. And that's where we got the whole K2 Hamilton Place Strategies BC Partners thing, because we all know Carlyle Group owns Dominion and Staple Street, but who is the fixer? Like, who owns Serbia Broadband? Who owns this entity or that entity that handles issues when there's problems? That's where BC Partners comes into play. And BC Partners is basically Apollo Global Management. It's HHS, and it's Carlyle Group. And you sit there and you think, wait, these people own not only the voting machines, but the actual networks on which these machines are connecting and existing. They control the entire space. And here's where it ties back, like, why you would want to control this. So I mentioned UJA Federation being Mossad and ADL and APAC being Mossad earlier, and that UJA Federation is chaired by the same guy who chairs Apollo Global Management. Here's what we found in the last few days, Donna, and you won't believe it, but we've identified the entities that colluded with HHS and the CDC to basically murder people during the COVID pandemic. And Michigan was one of the states where your governor, in her infinite grace and wisdom, ordered elderly people to be sent to nursing homes to basically, like Wolf, Cuomo, Whitmer, and a couple others I can't remember off the top of my head. They were the ones that were famously the murderers of elderly people. And we talked about Mossad handling Dana Nessel's campaign and being intimately involved in, the top ticket politicians in the state of Michigan. Well, that same group basically colluded with HHS, and BC Partners has Jason Roos. That's a name that, if you take nothing away from this conversation today, take that name away. He doesn't get nearly enough credit that he deserves. That's the person at hhs.gov who was at IARPA and DARPA and was tasked with total control over distribution of the vaccines and therapeutics during COVID. And how does that apply to Apollo or UJA? Well, we talked about K2 is being kind of Dominion's fixer. K2 had partnered with a company called Palantir since at least 2012. And we know Palantir is one of Elon Musk's old, Peter Thiel, PayPal Mafia, longtime cronies. All right. Reid Hoffman is in that PayPal Mafia too. Well, Palantir, if you remember, in June or July of 2020, Deborah Birx, the scarf asshole, she's the one that ordered that all COVID patient data and DNA be redirected directly to HHS that had partnered with Palantir. So you've got K2, Palantir, and Apollo operating as basically one entity. And going further, K2 is founded by Jules Kroll, all right, and his son Jeremy. Jules Kroll is one of the guys that Harvey Weinstein hired when he was first being accused of sexual assault. They hired K2 to basically harass witnesses and discredit them and intimidate them. Black Cube was the other firm. And David Boyce at Boyce, Schiller, and Flexner was the one responsible for hiring them. But they go way back. We're talking about Vatican. We're talking about Bernie Madoff. We're talking about Hadassah. We're talking about this guy is married to the former vice chairman of UJA Federation. We're talking about the group that's tasked right now with being the prime clerk unwinding the FTX racket. We're talking about the guy that they send in whenever there's a Ponzi scheme that they get caught doing and they need to clean the books and cover their tracks and their liabilities. That's who they are. And you want to really hit close to home? Hunter Biden got involved through his company Paradigm with R. Allen Stanford, who had a Ponzi scheme that he ran based out of Antigua. He's a Texas oil billionaire, all right? He had a Ponzi scheme that puts Bernie Madoff's to shame. And guess who was working for him is Jules Kroll. He was a client of K2, and I shit you not. He actually went to Jules Kroll, and he said, I need to get additional investors into this fund. So can you help me? Jules said, absolutely. So Jules goes to another client of his and bullshits him, telling him that R. Allen Stanford's company is the bee's knees and it's great, and gets the client interested. And the client says, okay, Jules, I trust you. We've been working together a long time. Do me a favor, write up a financial report for me, because that's what they supposedly do, K2 and Kroll. Well, he goes back, completely fabricates a bullshit financial report, brings it to the client. The client, again, this is Jules's client. He brings it to the client. The client pours tons of money into the fund. R. Allen Stanford and Jules make shit tons of money, as does Hunter Biden, and the client loses his ass. That's the kind of people that we're dealing with here. Like, they are the fixers of the worst people on earth. And Peter Thiel was the necessary middleman that allowed Apollo Global to have access to patient data. And on April 26th, Donna, a lawsuit was filed against Apollo Global because they were buying life insurance on the people that they were going to kill with therapeutics, with remdesivir, with diazepam, with intubation, and with the most lethal doses of the vaccines. It was a senior citizens life wagering scheme. And what happened was, before the pandemic, Apollo, chaired by UJA's guy, so see Apollo as Mossad, co-founder Leon Black, Jeffrey Epstein associate, Nathan Wolf, Jeffrey Epstein associate involved with creating COVID. So anyway, Apollo and their partners, like BC Partners and Carlyle and Blackstone, they buy up all the hospitals and a lot of these assisted living facilities so that they can control the protocols that are being used in those. And then when ivermectin and HCQ were getting all the rage, if you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, the FDA in March of 2020 recommended it. They came out and recommended it. They've since deleted the tweet, but they revoked it, not just for the EUA and the protection from liability, but because they needed the deaths.
Yeah.
Because they had to maintain how the COVID is deadly narrative. but they had also bought life insurance policies on people in certain states that they were collecting life insurance benefits on, that they were killing in hospitals. And how did they know which people to buy life insurance on?
The ones that are going to
Because
kill.
they were using predictive analytics through their artificial intelligence platforms, not just Palantir, but Anthem and Force Marsh Group. And they had the guy, Jason Ruse, HHS, like the chief distributor of vaccines and therapeutics during COVID, who's also DARPA and IARPA, who is also BC Partners, in their back pocket. As of last Friday, Donna, we've been shouting about this because I hadn't seen many other people, if anybody, talking about Apollo Global Management except us. And as of last Friday, they're finally officially under criminal investigation in New York.
That's awesome.
Who filed that website or the lawsuit?
So if you go on my profile and just
The Twitter
search,
profile or what?
yes, ma'am, search Apollo Criminal Investigation. It'll it has the,
are you in a position where you could assist me with that, or are you doing it on your phone?
I'm doing this on my phone, Donna. I'm sorry.
That's no worries. So I'll get it figured out here in a minute.
Jonathan, did you break that story? Did you put all
Yes,
that
sir.
together? Because I saw that somewhere on Twitter or somewhere, and that is incredible. Well, first of all, great job. You should get a Pulitzer for that. And
Well, they don't give Pulitzers to
horrible.
people that
Or
are
whatever.
that are
yeah, no, and some sort of award, because that's amazing. People uncovered that they're buying life insurance on people that they know are going to die, and they're actually assisting them in dying. That's
it's
horrible.
funny. So I'm surrounded
How
by
far back does that go, Jonathan? I'm looking for a tweet right now.
if you do a keyword search, it's going to be a whole heck of a lot easier. But if it's not able to do a keyword search, I'm trying to think.
Give me a keyword to search a minute.
It would probably be, gosh, Donna, you know how much I've been posting.
Yeah, that's the
lately,
problem with
so-
all of us that are creating so much content, is that you're like grabbing stuff out of the air. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. She said I've got this disorganized amount of files and such that I really need to get it all filed. It's like we keep it in our heads a lot of times, but yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing. So I'm fortunate to be surrounded by some absolute savages who are just normie nobodies like myself, that don't have, contractual or financial hangups or obligations to, be compromised on the information that we release. We just want the truth regardless of where it leads.
Right.
And so my friend Lori and I had created a hypothesis that they were doing this, and we knew that they were doing it based on everything that we had seen. And then my buddy Dakota, who is on Twitter as DSauce, he's the person who actually found, as I was probably day 4 or 5 into going ham on Apollo Global Management, he's the guy that actually found the lawsuit that had just been filed. So this was probably April 29th, April 30th, and the lawsuit had been filed literally days earlier. So credit to him, and credit to the, there's an account, a couple of accounts called The Only Me There Is, and True North. Like they have been, and Chris Hunter, obviously, who I work with on all of the network forensics on all of this stuff. They absolutely are worth following. They are must follows.
I've got it right here. So let me see if I can send it to where I can pull it up in a minute. So keep going, please.
So yeah, we had this hypothesis, like I said, based on everything that we had seen, and it just so happened that what we found as far as the evidence and the receipts that we came across after we formulated our hypothesis did nothing but further validate our line of reasoning. And so this guy, Mark Rowan, is also the chair of the board of directors at Penn, or the board of trustees, if you will. Rob Capito was formerly on that board. But in the wake of the 10/7 Hamas attacks, Mark Rowan led the charge to get the president and one of the trustees of Penn fired because they weren't appropriately sympathetic or sufficiently sympathetic to Israel. But then somebody like me watches 10/7 happen, going in with the knowledge that out of the top 5 intelligence agencies in the world, objectively, the United States and Israel are 2 of those 5 on any list that you could possibly compile. And it's not that it's improbable or unlikely that they were blindsided. It's that it's impossible they were blindsided.
Yeah.
There is no chance. And so going in, and then you have the emergency services not getting there until 6 hours in one situation and like 12 to 14 hours in another situation. You're like, this is coordinated.
Yeah.
And then you remember Hamas is a Likud Unit 8200 construct that has the full faith and support of Ben Netanyahu himself. And he's been on record, on video, saying if you want, Israel or Zionism to succeed and the expansion of Israel to succeed, you must support Hamas. And so we talk about people like funding both sides of situations. We saw the Columbia University protests, I think, a month ago. And turns out, like, when I was watching that, like my bullshit-o-meter, Donna, now is so perfectly calibrated that, like, it takes me seconds. When I turn something on, I'm like, no, not buying. All right, now we're looking in immediately to who's behind it. And it turns out Lisa Fithian was leading the Columbia University protests. And who is that? That's the Occupy Wall Street bitch.
Yeah.
She works for the IMF, for World Bank, for the CIA, and for Mossad. I shit you not, and the United Nations. And so they were going around, and meanwhile, while these Columbia University protests were happening, Mossad's account on Twitter was posting people like students that are insufficiently pro-Israel. We will have your names and we will make sure that you will never work or that your degree is going to be worthless. And that's when I lost my shit. That's when I was like, okay, okay. Number one, go fuck yourselves. Pardon my French. Number two, these are American college kids that we're allowing Israel's intelligence apparatus to threaten and extort.
Mm-hmm.
And they had some of their own operatives monitoring social media. So they had not only the, in real life agitators or non-supporters monitoring what was going on. They had their own social media monitors reporting back and saying, hey, this person isn't this. And they were trying to get people thrown out of school, professors fired, trustee members thrown out. Why? So that they could replace them with people that are more friendly to their agenda. And I mentioned Mark Rowan got the president and a trustee member fired. Who did he replace him with? Blackstone, Carlyle Group, and Apollo Global lackeys, so that they could consolidate further control of our institutions. And that's when I realized, okay, why would you fund the slaughter of your own people? And then you remember that the organization CAIR, are you guys familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
CAIR, which is long known to be a funder and supporter of Hamas.
Yeah.
Who funds CAIR? Oh, Daniel Goldman's family, the Walter Haas Jr. Foundation, Levi Strauss, like Dan Goldman, the guy who was the lead prosecutor on Trump's first impeachment, the senator from New York, who's making a big stand about Section 230 and the prosecution of Fauci and the Hunter Biden laptop, trying to discredit all that. Yeah, that's his family that funds the Columbia University protests and Goldman Sachs as well. Yeah, it's his family that funds CAIR, that funds the slaughter of innocent Israelis to further Zionist agendas. And oh, by the way, on the other side of his family, he's literally named Daniel Sachs Goldman. He's a Goldman Sachs heir. And who is Goldman Sachs? That's the Atlantic Council. So you're talking about the same people that infiltrate Smartmatic and our vote machines on one side of the family, and the other side of the family that literally funds the murder of Jews so that they can create sympathy for Jews. And
This has been going on for many, many, many decades. That it's a psyop stuff that's going on all the time. And I got to tell you, I questioned quite a few events in history, and the ADL is probably going to come after me at some point in time because I've kind of.
They're not going to bother you. They're not going to
What's that?
bother you. They're not going to bother you. You're with me. I promise. You're good. They're not going.
There you go.
They're not going.
Well, I mean, it's really true. I mean, we have got to start questioning all of these entities right from the bottom to top, because the ones that we've been taught to trust, whether you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever race you identify, all of these stupid labels that have done nothing but deceive us, they're all infiltrated, and they try to get you to be part of their club. But the clubs are corrupt, and the clubs are being run by those very people that are set out to destroy us, that we've been taught to trust.
I'm going to give you two more organizations, and this is going to bring all of what I've said full circle. All right. Posted this yesterday. Two entities that you need to become familiar with. One is the International Crisis Group, and the other is an organization called AVAZ. AVAAZ. And talking about like not trusting these institutions and been psyoped into oblivion, this is the whole psyop. So International Crisis Group is involved with our elections. Its chairman emeritus is Lord Mark Malloch Brown.
Oh yeah, that one comes up a lot. That's bad.
It has George and Alex Soros on the board of trustees. And it has the former vice admiral of the U.S. Coast Guard, Mick Walter or Mick Harvey. I can't remember his name. Like it's our own, like U.S. Navy is working directly with them. And they're a global enterprise that basically is a global fixer for situations, including and especially elections. But who is AVAZ? Well, AVAZ, AVAAZ. AVAZ is an entity that was created by Ricken Patel, Ricken, Ricken Patel. He created it through a grant that he received from Res Publica, RES Publica. Res Publica is founded and controlled by the Open Society Institution. So George Soros. Right? Where did Ricken Patel work? He worked at the International Crisis Group. All right. What's so important about that? Why does any of that matter? AVAZ is the company that supplies and LARPs or pretends or disguises themselves as Hamas to do operations. So you want to talk about the people that killed people in Israel on 10/7. It's these people. Wow. The same people that are part of the International Crisis Group are the same people that are involved with our elections, are the same people that murdered thousands of Israelis indiscriminately to create fast generated support for Israel. They're willing to kill their own people for Zionism. Like it's, you remember when George H.W. said if the American people ever knew what we had done, they'd chase us down the streets and lynch us?
Yep.
It's that times 100.
Can you define Zionism for everybody out there, for anyone that doesn't understand exactly what you're talking about? Because this is not about the Jewish people, or the Palestinian people, or the people. This is a weaponized global crime syndicate.
Yeah, Zionism has two definitions. You have the dictionary definition that basically says Israel has the right to exist, defend itself, and have self-determination. That's what they come back with whenever they say Zionism. That's not what the people that are actually in charge of Israel define Zionism as. Zionism is basically the expansion of a Jewish supremacy state through extortion, murder, global blackmail, to expand Israel's powers all the way, not just through the West Bank and through Gaza, but also to connect Ukraine as well. They want to turn Ukraine into basically new Israel, or, major Israel, if you will. And that's what the New Israel Fund helps to subsidize.
Well, sorry to interrupt here, guys, but my phone is going nuts with people that need some help with me fixing some stuff, so I think I'm going to have to jump off. But
thanks,
yeah.
Rob.
Bye, Rob.
We'll talk to you later, but thanks for coming on today.
Yep, see ya.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rob.
Bye-bye. Talk about the New Israel Fund.
So the New Israel Fund, the CEO of New Israel Fund, his name is Larry Garber, Garber. All right. He's part of have you heard of the that program called Protect Democracy Project that was like Transition Integrity Project and the National Task Force on Elections Crises? Mary McCord, Georgetown, a lot of people like Jennifer Granholm was part of it. Well, he's part of that. And that organization is Mossad. All right. And it was created and is funded by Mossad. And we can go through the entities that have unique names that are basically arms of Mossad if you guys want to. But Larry Garber, the CEO, you look at his picture, and I've posted about him, and you get pedo vibes immediately. And you also notice that he's been not only CEO of New Israel Fund, but he's also been on the National Task Force for Election Crises with Michael Chertoff, who is second generation Mossad. See if you can find Larry Garber's picture.
See if we can find him. You can keep talking. I'm just going to I'm noticing a lot of familiar names here.
But yeah, New Israel Fund is founding like the rebuild, or funding, I should say, the rebuild of Gaza and Palestine. And obviously they're trying to usurp control of a lot of beachfront property and real estate in the area after the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. And unfortunately, Jared Kushner is involved in that too. And is another thing that really, really bothers me.
What's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on Jared is thanks for the Abraham Accords and the Paris Agreement, and have nothing to do with the next Trump administration, please.
Can I ask you just a quick question, Jonathan? Do you think Trump, this is like a Gordian knot? There's just everything just seems so interconnected that it's like almost impossible to take it apart. But don't you think Trump knows this stuff? Like from the nursing home deaths to what's going on in Israel, and I assume he does, but why doesn't he talk about it and wake people up? He has the ear of the nation, the world.
Yeah. So that's a great question. My thinking is, number one, he's far more cognizant of the entire environment and how things really are than he was going in. Sorry, I got a phone call. One of the people that I actually mentioned helped me unwind the Apollo Global, Lori. That was her calling. So
ask Laura if she wants to come on BNN sometime.
I will. I'll make sure to do that. But her and I and some other great people just were granted conference in SCOTUS on, let's see, June 4th by Clarence Thomas. So we have a lawsuit at the Supreme Court for what happened in Georgia against, Brad Raffensperger and a number of other bad actors.
Peter's on that one, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. And
congratulations, that's awesome.
Yeah. Now we find out on the 20th if we're granted writ. So keep us in your prayers. Peter's exhibits and our exhibits are a lot of the stuff that's used. So fingers crossed. But anyway, I'm trying to remember what I was saying now.
No, you were talking. My question was, why isn't Trump like waking the world up to these criminal organizations that seem to?
I'm going to put in a slight correction. President Trump, the rightful president of the United States. I have to do that. You guys know I'm going to do it.
Oops.
So I feel like it goes back to, okay, to answer your first question, does he know about a lot of it? I don't think he knows about all of it and every single name on every single page. I do think he knows enough to know the core issues that have to be addressed, like day one or week one or month one. I don't think anybody knows all of it because, like, as much as I've put out, I'm still finding new stuff every day. And I've been doing this like 7 days a week for 2 years, like 20-hour days almost. And it's just like, it's so big. But if you get to the heart and the central figures, you can kill off the branches by just cutting out the heart. So why doesn't he make, a bunch of statements about this and that? Well, what good is it going to do when the bad guys are completely in charge of the administration? Like the DOJ, they're in charge of the court system. They're in charge of the intelligence apparatus, unfortunately. So him saying it can be great for the rah-rah stuff. But I also liken it to when you don't have the power to, effectuate change or recourse against the bad guys, what benefit does it serve you to interrupt your enemy while they're making mistakes? That's my thinking.
Got a question for you. Who's the head of the snake?
CIA and Mossad, and I think that Apollo, UJA Federation, Incutel, a lot of these private entities that are funded by the CIA are hugely involved. Apollo is, and certainly there's an organization that others have done far more research on called Maximus that certainly interconnects with a lot of this. I will defer to them on expertise. I've only recently been getting familiar, but Apollo is as close to the head of the snake as you can get, because you're talking about David Rubenstein is the chair of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's the chairman of the board of trustees of Johns Hopkins University. And Apollo over here, which has the HHS in its pocket, and then K2 and Kroll, which has a guy by the name of Alvin Krongard. He's the guy who's the vice chairman of Johns Hopkins University. He's Incutel, he's Apollo Global Management, and he's Central Intelligence Agency. He is one of the worst people to ever exist. He's the guy that famously bought put options on UAL, basically the Arab and Iraqi oil and energy company, 5 days before September 11th. He's the guy that bought 125,000 shares of American Airlines on September 10th. He is Apollo, CIA, Incutel, which is also CIA, and Michael Crow. And he's Johns Hopkins University. Wow. And Johns Hopkins, famous or infamously, I should say, we know hosted Event 201 with Avril Haines and Chris Elias and LaToya somebody. I can't remember her last name, but it was founded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They gamed out what would happen, and they basically coordinated the planned release of COVID. And COVID showed up in America 29 days after that gaming out exercise happened. And
if you were to go down rapid fire and just give me like 20 names of the head of the snake, because they're all working together. It's like a Medusa is what's going on here. So, and I think there's another layer there. And I would say that goes back to the Godfather references. and there's a whole layer of people like that you'll never see, like the Orensini family, Pallavicini family, and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
You'll
the Great
never
Pope.
see. And
So-
but it's like the Black Pope and all that other stuff that's going on there. So I kind of believe that these people are kind of a front to that, and that the head of the snake is actually, that's where the head of the snake goes. But I don't know. So
it's funny that you asked me that, because yesterday so Ivan Raiklen put out a list of that 350 names.
I love Ivan, just so that everybody knows. I know Ivan. I consider Ivan a friend, and I love Ivan. And yes, he should in fact be named Sergeant at Arms, because he would go after everything. The deep state marauder, Secretary of Retribution. This guy is a no back down, pissed off patriot. All kinds of done with it, right?
So in response, like obviously when you only have 350, spots to occupy, some people are going to get left off. So I made a comment saying, where are these people? And I took the next 4 posts to do exactly what you wanted me to do. So you can look at just like those 2. I just listed names. And
okay. Hang on a minute.
So-
now, I'm having to run like 6 screens here. So I see
I'll
350 by Ivan, but I need a little help here. Okay, Jonathan?
I'll do my best off the top of my head.
Yeah, give me your top 10 list, and then that we put out here, and then I'll post this on my X account. I post everything on X, Twitter. Most of my accounts start out on Telegram because I like Telegram the best. But I'm getting over my grudge match with Twitter right now because I got kicked off with the Flins years ago. So I've been slowly getting back on. So people, please give me a like out there because I'm building my account back. I had a really good account when I was an Anon, and so now I'm trying to get back again. But at any rate, go to my Twitter account, give me a like, please. But anyhow, give me your top 10 to 20.
Top 10 to 20.
Try to write this down here, okay?
Okay, you handwriting, or typing? I just need to know how fast I should go.
Well, let me pull something up and I'll type it because I can actually type very, very quickly. I've been trying to do it on Post-it notes and everything else around. You should see my desk. It's like totally pathetic. Okay, hang on a minute. I'm going to save my work here a minute. And let me get to the bottom of my file, and we'll see if I can keep up with you, okay?
Okay. And these are only names, granted, these are names that were not included on the 350
Okay,
list.
go ahead. Let's see how I do. So watch my desk like flies. I'm typing like Flint Lockwood here. It's going to happen.
Okay, Alvin Krongard. Krongard. Michael Chertoff.
Spell it.
Chertoff.
Okay.
Mark Rowan, spelled with a C.
ROWENC.
MarcRowan.
Okay.
Penny Pritzker.
Who by the Pritzker family owns the majority of the genital mutilation clinics that have popped up.
Yep.
Okay.
Jason Roos. ROOS.
Yep.
Peter Thiel. Jules and Jeremy Kroll. KROLL. Leon Black. Avril Haines. Chris and Mark Elias. Mark is also spelled with a C again. Larry Silverstein. Rob Capito. That's spelled Kapito. Let's see. Shai Weissman. So SHAI. Waisman. Juan Zarat, Juanzarate. Peter Neffinger, Neffenger. Obviously, I think you could probably consider Dana Nessel, Jocelyn Benson, and Gretchen Whitmer as one, but one that doesn't get to play is Amber McReynolds.
Who is she?
She's the director of National Vote at Home Institute. She's also on the board of governors for the U.S. Postal Service. She's on the National Task Force of Election Crises. She's the one that got Eric put in the state of Michigan.
And I got a real question about the Postal Service right now because they were involved in the election stuff. And I don't know why more people aren't talking about the fact that the Postal Service was complicit in this also.
That's why she's on the board of governors and was named in 2021. So in that same vein, David Becker from Pew Charitable Trust, who developed the ERIC system. ERIC was developed by Mossad. We now know that. And the reason that we know that is the next name I'll give you, Elise Schutzer, Schutzer. She is director of field ops for Pew Charitable Trust. At the same time that David Becker was there from 2015 to 2022, left to go be the global issues manager at ExxonMobil. The whole time, though, she was part of Jewish Democratic Council of America, which we've already mentioned is a front for UJA Federation. You would have to probably put Lynn Korda Kroll on there.
How do you spell it?
Lynnkorda. Kroll. That's Jules Kroll's wife.
Okay.
Let's see. Tom Glosser. Glocer. Phoebe Novakovic. Phebenovakovic. That's Michael Vickers' ex-wife. She's CIA, General Dynamics, Serbian, involved with Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. The Cleveland Clinic has not gotten nearly the attention that it deserves, but that is hugely part of the U.S. Serbian bioweapons program.
Okay, so I just bring something up a minute. Hang on a minute. Do you remember? So, I was obsessed with 9/11, totally obsessed with it because I didn't buy this. I remember being there. I watched the towers come down. I was sitting with my dad, who died a couple of years ago, and we watched the towers come down. And my dad never missed a beat. He's like, that's controlled demolition. And then right after that, there were two planes that took off. There's some confusion there on the planes that were up in the air. But I do remember seeing two planes that had a bunch of people disembark in Cleveland that looked like they were the same planes that said they took off to hit the towers, but they weren't. There were extra planes there that went off course. And when they shut down NORAD and everything else, they shut everything up because we could have had fighters there shooting these things out of the air within less than 5 to 10 minutes before they hit. So therefore, it was all involved. But there were two planes that landed in Cleveland. And there were a bunch of people that disembarked that there's no answers to why this happened, other than the fact that a smart cookie would look at this and say, all right, so they took these planes off as the ones that were supposed to hit the tower, loaded with people. Those people got off in Cleveland, and you can watch them. I watched them disembark the plane without the tail numbers and everything were obfuscated by that point. So I'm pretty sure, just looking at this, that they had two sets of planes that took off. The ones that actually had people, a lot of them landed in Cleveland, and then the ones that hit the tower were different planes. Therefore, if I'm right on this, and if a hunch tells me I'm 100% right on this, that there were two sets of planes, just like they're running two sets of books right now for the financials that are going on. There's two economies going on right now, and we never see the real. We're like in the crumbs under the table economy, these people at the top have unlimited. They don't even care if they have money at all because they own it all. But those planes, there were 2 sets of planes that took off there.
Yeah, so your theory is, I think, going to be proven true, and so I've talked a lot about K2 and Kroll on this, so I'm going to give you another name, Brian Michael Jenkins. His background is he was the deputy vice chairman of Kroll in 1993 when the New York Port Authority tasked Kroll and him with developing like a terrorism vulnerability report for the World Trade Center Plaza. And so he went and basically said, although it's unlikely, the World Trade Center is vulnerable to being hit by airplanes. He said this in 93. He said this in 93. Him and his buddy, L. Paul Bremer, Bremer, had a reputation for going and pushing companies and governments to protect themselves from the dangers of terrorism. And then they were accused. France actually believes that they were the ones that were going and doing the terrorism operations to justify the, warnings that they were giving to people to provide, to give them an excuse to pay for their security services. Who handled the security for the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001? Kroll. Larry Silverstein was the chairman of UJA Federation 94 to 97. All right. The guy that followed him, James Tisch, is another person that needs to be on the list. He was the guy that was the chairman of UJA at the time the towers went down. And remember, Jules Kroll is married to the vice chairman of UJA Federation, Len Corda Kroll. All right. Brian Michael Jenkins, who did all that reporting, he came to Kroll from the Rand Corporation. He was involved in developing the MK Ultra platform with British intelligence. Brian, Brian, Michael Jenkins.
And he was behind MK Ultra in Rand.
He worked with British intelligence, U.S. naval intelligence, and Israeli intelligence on the MK Ultra program at Rand. He is believed to be intimately involved with the planning and the execution of 9/11. And I'd imagine we find out that he was principally involved. And so if we understand that Mossad planned it, then you'd also expect Mossad would have somebody on the back end involved with the cover-up. And they actually had 2 people on the back end. The chairman of the 9/11 Commission, his name is Philip Zelikow, Zelikow. He led or directed the 9/11 Commission report. He was accused by many on that commission of being a White House plant to cover for George Bush, the CIA, the Epsteins, the Clintons, and Mossad. He's also he's the guy that, fast forward, begged Congress to appoint a 9/11 style commission to investigate the origins of COVID, because the same people that did 9/11 did COVID. Let's be very clear about that. We've got the receipts. We know that you did it. Okay, for the feds that are watching this,
because they're watching it. I got threatened like 3 weeks ago by another Zionist, and which I think is really funny and in your face DeVos.
So, oh gosh.
Yeah, there's another one we could go down, John.
A DeVos? Did you say DeVos?
Yeah, said got to get rid of Brandenburg. We tried to get rid of her twice, and we couldn't get rid of her. She keeps coming back like a bad dream.
So glad you said that. Your viewers are about to have their minds blown. Okay, the second person involved with the 9/11 cover-up is Michael Chertoff. His mom was literally Mossad, involved with Operation Magic Carpet. All right. He was George Bush's second secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. He has the Chertoff Group nowadays. He was the chairman of BAE Systems, and he's involved with the National Task Force on Elections Crises. So he's trying to make sure that our elections are such that nobody ever gets into office that would potentially hold them accountable for their dirty deeds. And backing up even further, Jules Kroll, that I've been talking to you about K2 and Kroll and what have you.
And all the nonsense that happened in the Capitol.
Sedition hunters. So he served on Robert Kennedy's campaign team in 1968.
And who did?
Jules Kroll, the
okay.
co-founder of K2. Jeffrey Blattner was Ted Kennedy's chief counsel, who told Ted to tell his brother Robert not to run against Lyndon B. Johnson, the incumbent. Who is Jeffrey Blattner? That's somebody that belongs on your list, by the way. Blattner. He's the executive chairman and the chairman of the board of trustees of HIAS. That's one of the key groups behind the border invasion. Why are they invading our border? Well, in addition of truly they don't like white people, they're trying to bring in votes. And we know they're doing this because they're using the CBP1 app to register these people, and they're using the Department of Motor Vehicles to auto-register people to vote as soon as they get a driver's license or even a non-driver ID. A lot of these blue states have auto-enroll.
Okay. Do you know who created or behind the CBP1 app?
I don't.
Because that's something Jeff Bongiorno has been drilling down on Mondays. So that's another one. So we need to get who created that and what the connection is there. So I'm just going to keep rapid fire writing down names. So keep going.
Okay. So I got past the 9/11 stuff sufficiently for now.
DeVos, right? And we got into Michael Chertoff and DeVos
to bring it all back home. All right. So Betsy DeVos, director or secretary of education in the first Trump administration, she was kind of the first one that I consider a domino to abandon President Trump at the end of the first administration, if you remember that. And especially in the lame duck period.
And Pete Pence, she resigned January 7, and then Trump magically gets $22 million in his campaign to be the traitor he is.
Yep. And so Betsy DeVos has a brother by the name of Eric Prince.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
And who is Eric Prince? Well, he's the founder of Blackwater, and it later became, after a couple of mergers, Constellus. All right. How did Eric Prince get Blackwater off the ground? Well, there's a guy by the name of Alvin Krongard from Apollo, from CIA, from Incutel, from Johns Hopkins University that we had talked about earlier, was Eric Prince's connection at the CIA. He got Eric Prince his first quote unquote off the books, or what's called a black contract, that made Eric Prince's entire career. And fast forward in 2016, guess who buys Eric Prince's company?
Same guy.
Apollo.
Oh.
And who is Apollo again? That is Mossad with Leon Black, Mark Rowan, Josh Harris. And the chairman of Apollo is the chairman of UJA Federation today, which we know isn't an Israeli lobby. It's not Israeli friendly. It's not rah-rah. It is an arm of Israeli intelligence, Mossad.
Wow.
So when you see, and I'm going to probably hurt some feelings on this, but last night I was getting so many messages about Julie Kelly and Shipwrecked, who's the attorney that's represented a lot of J6ers, and, you know, Steve Baker and Blaze Media and all this. When I get messages like that, I'm like, it's so tiresome, because Julie Kelly's husband works for Blackstone, and for he's like the highest paid Democrat lobbyist in the country. His name's John Kelly. He works for the owner of the Chicago Bulls, Jerry Reinsdorf. His company's name is All Circo, ALL-CIRCO. And over the past 9 years, he's made $12.3 million as a lobbyist. That's Julie Kelly's husband. They live in Chicago suburbs. I won't say where, but
Oh yeah, just out them. Where do they live?
well, so the Blaze Media aspect, why does that matter? Glenn Beck and, Mark Levin and Steve Baker and all, Steve Deese and all these, like Alex Stein, like they're controlled opposition, folks. All right. Why? How do I know that? Because Betsy DeVos, whose brother sold his company to Apollo, is Blaze Media's biggest funder now. So I don't give a shit what Blaze says other than when they lie about what J6 actually was. And Steve Baker, if you watch this, I know you're full of shit, buddy. There's a reason that Julie hasn't mentioned K2 or Kroll. There's a reason why I caught you the day before my original account was suspended permanently, lying about January 6th evidence. There's a reason that my account was nuked. And it took me 3 months to actually get a backup account because I know you're full of shit. You will not protect the FBI from the people who they've denied due process and stripped of their civil rights. I hope you watch this and know when I say we're coming for everything, like we're coming for everything. So Blaze is owned by Apollo Global Management. Let's just be clear about that. Daily Wire and Prager University are IDF Unit 8200. And
Say
Charlie Kirk.
Say that again.
Daily Wire and Prager University are IDF Unit 8200.
Wow.
Prager University isn't even shy about it. Like their CEO was Marissa Street, Streit. She was literally IDF Unit 8200. And I like Doug Prager enough, but I understand Mossad and IDF, like they have their own agenda. They serve Israel's interests, not America's interests. I don't need Chaya Raichich, who her family runs the Chabad synagogue in Los Angeles, that's partnered with the Save the Children Foundation, that's partnered with the Clinton Foundation, that's partnered with, Boston Consulting Group, that was just raided 3 weeks ago in Guatemala for under the auspices of harm and abuse and trafficking of children, and that was just raided in Turkey for the organ harvesting of children. I don't need them dictating to me what appropriate conservative discourse or decorum is. You're going away. You're getting removed out of discourse entirely. And when we talk about Carrie Lake and who bribed her, Jeff DeWitt, you know who Jeff DeWitt is? He's the CEO of Superfeed. Who funds Superfeed? Who's behind them? Is it the DeVosses? Remind me, I can't remember. I genuinely can't remember. But when he offers Carrie Lake money to leave politics because the people back east want her out of politics, he doesn't mean D.C. He doesn't mean Northern Virginia. He doesn't mean Baltimore. What does he mean? He means Israel wants her out of the way, which is why Israel threw its support behind Katie Hobbs 7 days before the 2022 midterm elections. And it's not that they like Katie Hobbs. Katie Hobbs is one of the most unlikable people that's ever existed with zero personality.
Yeah.
They dislike Carrie Lake because they believe she will hold them accountable. You want to know child trafficking. This is going to be really weird, but I'm gonna say that I met Carrie Lake at Mar-a-Lago, and I noticed, I watch people's behavior. I don't listen to their words. I watch their behavior. And what really struck me weird by Carrie Lake is she had a guy that was running around her. And he had a group of women that were also around her, and they would run around and get in between her and other people. Well, I'm a little persistent. Okay. So I just kind of waited and watched, and I saw a little break. So I got in right next to her. And when she looked in my eyes, I saw fear, and a lot of it, because she was surrounded by people that were basically pushing her around. But I saw fear in Carrie's eyes. And it was like, and then watching this group of people, and I don't know who her handler's name is, but he was kind of a little visible and obnoxious, I might add, if you're out there watching, and I hope you are. And then these women would like get around her like a bunch of little hens and move her around. And I finally got in there, and I'm like, "Hi, how are you?" And she just sat there and she looked at me, and it was almost, I had this feeling that she wanted to say something but couldn't. You know, have you ever been around somebody and you know that they want to say something, but all of a sudden it was like frozen? She's like frozen, like, oh yeah, what do I do? And that's what I saw in her eyes as they were moving her around. And I'm like, there's a lot more to this story right here than what's being told. And I think there are people that are in place that are either being threatened or moved around, but that's exactly what I saw in her eyes. And I think a lot of people out there that are in that situation, that they're just being shuttled around and such, you know?
Yeah, and we've seen it with Trump's own camp. Like, there are people in his inner circle that we know don't actually have America's best interests at heart. They honestly see Trump as a marketing chip for their own businesses. And
Trump Victory in Michigan is an organization that I think everybody should also look at, is Trump Victory. And it's in all the states. But if you can figure out who's in Trump Victory in the state of Michigan, they're the ones that are doing the text messages and that are using his name for the money laundering towards their dishonorable goals.
Yeah, and you look at the ticket that Carrie ran on. She had Mark Fincham, Blake Masters, and Abe Hamadeh. And you've seen the dynamic over the last, 3 months where Blake seems to have kind of like abandoned Abe and Carrie and Mark Fincham. And regardless of what you think about the other three, it makes sense to me when I remember that who was Blake Masters' like biggest funder, or one of them. It was Peter Thiel of Palantir. And Carrie told me when we first connected and got to know each other, that when TPUSA had an event that had her at it and DeSantis at the same event, like DeSantis's people were adamant that he not be pictured with her. And I'm like,
TPS's Turning Point, right?
TPUSA, Turning Point USA. And so I always thought that was strange. And then they say follow the money. And you remember that Ken Griffin of Citadel, who's tied to the Robin Hood Foundation, which is CIA and Incutel and the same people that we've been talking about manipulating markets and rigging markets and robbing retail investors. Ken Griffin was by far Ron DeSantis's biggest donor, $12 million last year. Once they realized that his campaign was sunk, now you have guys like Steven Schwartzman of Blackstone and, any number of these other private equity investors that are finally, they see the writing on the wall. And if they see that no Republican candidate has a chance other than Donald Trump, and probably no candidate has a chance in any kind of free or fair election, honest election, Trump is 14 plus over Biden, and everybody knows it. So, like, they see the writing on the wall, so they're going to hedge their bets, even though they were intimately involved in stealing the election from the first time and then lobbying Congress on January 4th to accept the electors and reject the plan that I think was largely coined by Ted Cruz, which I agreed with and had precedent for, that they were going to send the electors back to the states for 10 days to investigate election irregularities in the number of states that had them, which had they done that, and even had they given us lip service to it, many, many, many Republicans, myself included, would have accepted it and would have been okay with the idea of, okay, well, at least they did what they could. They gave us our whatever, even if we know our court systems are completely captured, whatever. What I'm saying is millions of Republicans or conservatives or Trump supporters would have been okay and crossed the Rubicon and been accepting that, okay, I guess Biden's president, even if they feel like they intentionally didn't have enough time. We didn't even get that. And Pence famously said, I know what, I hear your voices. I know your concerns. I promise you on Wednesday, your voices will be heard. Like, he was basically saying on January 6th that we were going to get the recourse and the investigation that we so desperately saw. And then we found out that we didn't get that. And
Betsy
K2
DeVos resigned, and Pence
K2
got $22 million.
K2 sedition hunters, the entrapment operation, actually had Christopher Brummer. That's another name that your people need to know. Christopher Brummer, Brummer. It could be Brent. I don't think it's Bremer. I think it's Brummer, with a U and not with an E. He was on Biden's transition team. Did you know that? From October until February, he was on Biden's transition team. They had their own people on the inside.
Well, all I can say right now is all of us better be praying real hard to God Almighty to bring this whole satanic system down, because that's exactly what's going on here. And I think he's going to do it. I really do. I believe that God will never abandon us nor forsake us. But I do think it's very important to go in and look at all of this so that we know the scum, the bottom feeders, these people. I mean, I can come up with a lot of expletives and I know all the words. It's like it's always a trick for me to make sure I pretty the words up when we're dealing with people like this, because they are so disgusting to me that there isn't a term that aptly describes them. But all I can say is that we've got to go through this and throw it out there so that people can see what's actually happening. And I think, honestly, you do an incredible job. You're probably, I'm not even going to say probably, you're my favorite researcher out there. And the reason why you're my favorite researcher out there is because not only do you have the ability to dig down on this, but you take not only what you do, but what everybody around you has done. And I also think you're one of the most gracious people I've ever met, because you are always quick to step back and highlight the people around you that are working with you. And I think that's just very, very endearing, precious. It's a beautiful testimony to your character. But you can throw things out there and connect those dots so fast. I know another person. I have another person that's kind of an informant to me that has that gift of being able to connect. That person is in other areas that you're not in. And so, it's like when you start connecting the dots with people that have that true gift of being able to just not only remember, but process it and snap it out there like that and see those connections, it's a gift to this world. It really is. But you are always welcome on here if you find something. So I'm wondering, I have next week, Tuesday, if you could come on at say 11 o'clock. That's the only time I have next week, or after on Tuesday, it'll be the following week. Would you come on the following week again? I mean, either one. I'd have you on like every single day. I mean, I love this is my happy spot. I would love to just sit here, type in the computer, and drill down on all of this, and then throw it out there so that these rats have nowhere to hide.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why I couldn't do next Tuesday or the following. You pick on that. That's fine.
Maybe all the above. We'll have a Jonathan week here, and just every
No.
single day spill it from one
So-
into the next, the next, to the next. Because I think that there's so many. This whole thing is like, it's like an amoeba, because it's an organism, and it kind of shifts and changes shape and stuff. And just when you think you've got a hold of it here, it squishes out of your fingers, and you got another whole area to go at. But I really think that the top of the snake, if we could get to the top of the snake, then maybe the 10 dominoes that would bring this whole thing down.
Yeah. So I wanted to say two things to that, and that's very kind of you, what you just said. I really appreciate it. Better
It's
than I deserve.
accurate, though. It's accurate.
I agree.
So I will say this. I'm not a black pill. I truly believe that we are winning and that we will win. I wouldn't be doing this if I thought it was hopeless. So
Right,
let me be
me
clear
either.
on that. I don't think, though, that we will just make it too big to rig. And here's why. Because they have the technology to erase gains and flip votes and erase registrations in an instant. And we're talking about, by they, I mean the people that assassinated both Kennedys, that did 9/11, that opened our borders, that created, released, and covered up COVID, that traffic and harm and murder children globally, and rig markets. Like, those are who we're fighting, and they just happen to be involved in election administration. So if you think you're just going to flood their domain with votes like a DDoS that they just can't combat, I think that's a little bit short-sighted. And
A little naive there.
I would encourage, like, these people are facing thousands of years of life imprisonment, many of them capital punishment several times over. The worst crimes ever committed by man. They are facing an existential crisis. And this is, to them, they hope, to be the last election that they ever administer, so that they never have to worry about accountability ever again. Because the accountability that meets the crimes they've committed is not something that they want to deal with.
It's final. When you commit treason, and there's treason, but there's also all the crimes against humanity, the outcome of that is a final outcome. There's no coming back from this.
That's
Doesn't
why-
President Trump know that, though, Jonathan?
I'm
he
sure
knows.
he does.
Yeah, and so to your point, David, I will say, I can't say much on this, but I will say that there are levers of protection in play to mitigate, and we have a golden gun with one shot, and so we can only use it once, because once you use it, they identify, they game theory around it, and figure out how to, circumvent your
Mitigate
protective vectors. But those are in place. But I say all that to say, don't rest on your laurels, don't get comfortable. And to your viewers, like, these are the most consequential 4.5, 5 months that we'll have potentially for the rest of our lives with America, because they will dictate what country our kids, our grandkids, and our great grandkids grow up in.
Or if we're even allowed to walk on the planet, because
Yeah.
this is what they're capable of. Well, I want to, if you're okay with this, I'd like to stop here. You've been wonderfully gracious with your time, both of you gentlemen have, and I love you both to pieces. I mean, you truly are brothers, and this is an honor to meet and talk with you, on a regular basis. I love you both. So how about we do this? Let's close in prayer. And then we'll have you back on next week, and maybe the next week after, because there's no end to where we can go with this, truly. So let's just go ahead and move with it. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Darrell, for David, for Ralph, for Karen, for Jonathan, and all the brave people, for Peter, and all the brave people out there who have decided to step into this fight, like Jeff Bongiorno and Jason Ikes, the people who are really doing the work behind the scenes. All of Jonathan's friends that are out there that are unnamed heroes that we just love, and we ask your favor upon every single one of them. Give them protection, your protection, a hedge of protection against all of these evil people who have decided to wage war on your children and thereby also, more importantly, on you. We love you, and we want to do whatever it takes that you would ask us to do to right and fight against this evil. We will not back down because it's your strength that's carrying us, and we believe in you. We believe that everything you do is good, and we will follow you no matter what the consequences are. We will deliver the truth no matter the cost. It's precious to us. You are precious to us. Your world is precious to us. Life is precious to us. Our country's precious to us. And every good thing that you've ever created is precious to us and worth fighting for. We thank you so much for everything. Bless everyone out there, all their families, the things that are important to them. Give them joy in their hearts today, knowing that you win every single time and you do not abandon your children. And we're thankful for that. And we're just going to tuck right in close to you, focus on you, focus on the fact that you are in fact leading us out of this captivity from very evil people. I pray that you would confuse every plan of the enemy, send them into dead ends where they know that their future, they've got two choices. It's either repent, come forward and right what they've done that's wrong, or the other outcome is going to be eternal separation from you and the rest of us where they can do us no more harm. And we thank you for that protection over us. We love you so much. You've been a great friend to us, and we want to be a wonderful and faithful friend and child to you. In the precious name of our Savior, Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. So,
Amen.
Any last words, gentlemen?
Just Jonathan, you're an amazing guy. I'm glad I got to meet you. Absolutely incredible.
Donna's very generous, and I'll have you guys' advertising checks in the mail next week. So thanks for that.
You're funny. I don't take any money for this. This is all volunteer, but hugs and kisses to both of you. So with that said, we just with everything that we said, we not only are winning, we won. We won this before we started. So when somebody gives you the bad news, you remember this has already been won. We're just playing crash in the cleanup right now. And all these people are going to be canned when at the end of this. They're done. They're over. Power's done. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. You don't have to worry or be afraid. Be strong. Stand for what's right. Don't be afraid. Don't let them take you down by their pathetic half-wit psyops, because that's all they got left. They're done. And so with that said, we're going to go to that part of the show that I'm sure everybody loves. Go to brandenburgforgovernor.com, because I'm the best non-conceder who has ever not conceded, and I'm not going to concede to liars, cheats, and thieves. We're going to fight them with our last breath. That's what's happening here. So with that said, you're all very loved. Go into this weekend, know that you are loved. You're precious beyond all words. And don't believe what I say. Don't believe what anybody says about you. Believe it because God Almighty says it about you, the creator of heaven and earth. That's the only opinion that matters right there. That is the only opinion that matters. You can't get much higher than that. Knows you inside and out, knows your thoughts, what you've done, what you're going to do. And guess what? He loves you in spite of ourselves. And he makes a way when there is no way. So just put your trust in God, and it's going to be okay. It really is. So God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. If you got no good example, be one, and don't waver on that. And we will see you next week, Monday. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you coming on today. Have a great weekend.